Chapter 763. Zhou Heng's magnetic star divine light was not only powerful, but it could also transform into a star magnetic field that could imprison a part of the world. At this moment, countless rays of starlight intertwined in the void at the top of the Forbidden City like a spider web, imprisoning the entire area. Not only that, but there was also an inexplicable magnetic force in this domain that restricted Yi Guchen's movements, causing his movements to slow down. The magnetic star divine light not only had the destructive power of starlight, but it also had the power to imprison. Is this Zhou Heng's special ability? The hundreds of thousands of people present were shocked as they looked at the starry domain that enveloped the entire mountaintop. Some of the heaven prides from the various empires were even wondering what would happen if they were trapped in such a domain. There was only one result after much thought, and that was to be completely imprisoned and tortured to death. The disciples of the Sword Sect's Forest of Pagodas all felt their hearts rise to their throats as they broke out in a cold sweat for Yi Guchen. Zhou Heng has even displayed his starry domain. It seems this battle is about to end. Song Yuyao's eyes were calm and contemptuous. Although Yi Guchen's strength had slightly exceeded her expectations, the battle had already ended. However, in the current situation, the dust had almost settled. Victory and defeat could be decided. On the top of the Forbidden City, Yi Guchen's body was imprisoned in the starry domain, and his range of movement was extremely limited. Countless rays of light intertwined around him like lasers, and the slightest touch could cut off his limbs. Are you still going to struggle in vain? Zhou Heng had become calm, and the corners of his mouth curved into a victorious smile. He was extremely confident in his means. He knew that there were very few people below the divine dwelling stage who could break his starry domain. If one wanted to forcefully break it, they would need to at least exceed his cultivation level. Although he did not know why Yi Guchen was able to contend against the heaven and earth spirit bridge at the life and death threshold, Zhou Heng believed that no matter how strong Yi Guchen was, it was impossible for him to surpass him. Yi Guchen's situation was very bad. He used wave-like subtle steps, and his figure was like a willow in the wind or duckweed in the water. Outside the starry field, Zhou Heng continued to release starry divine light to attack Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen's footsteps flitted as he evaded the attacks. At the same time, he released his powerful spiritual perception to search for the flaws in the astral domain. But in the eyes of outsiders, Yi Guchen was just dodging in a sorry state. Sigh. It's already pretty good that Yi Guchen was able to counterattack and defeat the Xinghong Crown Prince. However, compared to the Overlord-class forces, he's still lacking. Everyone present felt that it was a pity. They were also looking forward to seeing Yi Guchen turn the tables and crush the prodigies of the Starry Sword Pavilion. But it seemed that it was impossible. There's always someone who can subdue Yi Guchen. Finally, someone can subdue Yi Guchen. Not everyone was on Yi Guchen's side. The Vermilion Bird Jade, Yu Wenin, Yu Wenji, Wang Qin, and the others were happy to see this scene. Brother Yi, things aren't looking good. Kenpo was also sweating in his heart. Princess Phoenix Dawn was also paying close attention. Within the astral domain, Yi Guchen's figure shifted as he evaded the attacks. However, his speed was still suppressed by the magnetic field, so he couldn't unleash his full potential. But that powerful spiritual perception had already penetrated into the depths of the astral domain. Yi Guchen was looking for a flaw so that he could break it with one strike. Don't waste your time. If the domain formed by a special ability can be broken so easily, then it wouldn't be qualified to be called a special ability. Zhou Heng shook his head and smiled when he saw Yi Guchen trying to find a flaw. In his opinion, Yi Guchen was just making a last-ditch effort. Is that so? Yi Guchen revealed a faint smile. He had finally found a few key points to break the domain. What he needed to do next was to break it with one strike. Boom! Within Yi Guchen's body, the golden sea of qi was pushed to the extreme. His eyes flashed with a sharp sword light. Yi Guchen held the sword with both hands and poured in his true qi. A sharp sword aura that could destroy everything was brewing. What kind of sword technique is this? Zhou Heng's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling. Duga's 9 swords, sword-breaking style. Yi Guchen didn't activate the man and sword becoming one. Even so, The 9 swords was still Yi Guqin's most perfect sword technique. As for the sword-breaking style, it had the terrifying power to break all techniques with one strike. An extremely resplendent sword light swept out from the tip of the sword. Yi Guqin swung his sword 5 times in a row. 4 of the sword beams landed on the 4 weak points of the astral domain, followed by 4 loud explosions. Boom! The entire astral domain shattered under the shocked gazes of Zhou Heng and all the spectators. The domain turned into countless specks of light and dissipated into the void. In the end, the flawless 5th sword slashed down towards Zhou Heng with a force that could split the heavens and split the earth, piercing through the clouds. Impossible! Zhou Heng's face twisted in horror. How could his astral domain be broken? In a moment of desperation, Zhou Heng activated the magnetite star divine light in his eyes again. 2 blazing beams of light shot out and collided with the sword light. What made everyone speechless again was Yi Guqin's sword-breaking style seemed to be able to break through everything. Even the divine light of the magnetite star was cut in half by the sword light. One strike to break all techniques. Under the gaze of hundreds of thousands of spectators, Zhou Heng was sent flying while vomiting blood. A bloody hole appeared on his body as he fell heavily to the ground. Tears of blood flowed from his eyes. It was obvious that he had used too much of his divine power. Yi Guqin's figure looked exceptionally straight and slender among the scattered starlight spots in the sky. His expression was indifferent. Zhou Heng collapsed on the ground and vomited blood. He was severely injured and looked as miserable as a dog. At this moment, the entire place was silent. The hundreds of thousands of spectators were stunned and unable to make a sound. Only the sound of saliva being swallowed could be heard. Some cultivators gulped and said with a dry voice, "Yi Guqin won?" There were even some people who felt that it was too illusory, too unreal. Impossible, this is impossible. How can Yi Guqin be so strong? How can he defeat the Starry Sword Pavilion's genius? Zhu Keiyu's face was completely pale as she shook her head. Yu Wenyan, Yu Wenji, Wang Chen and the others also had dead expressions. Just how strong was Yi Guqin? The Xinghong Crown Prince's face was ferocious and the veins on his neck were bulging. He didn't expect that even the Starry Sword Pavilion's genius would fail. As for Kenpo, Princess Fengxi and the others, their eyes lit up. Yi Guqin had once again exceeded their expectations. He won. The disciples of the Sword Sect's Forest of Pagodas were so excited that tears welled up in their eyes. This trash. Song Yuyao's eyes were cold as she cursed in her heart. Zhou Heng had completely embarrassed the Starry Sword Pavilion. The 2 Martial Highness deacons harumphed coldly with cold expressions. In an instant, 2 extremely powerful auras of martial supremacies pressed down on Yi Guqin like the blazing sun. Yi Guqin's body shook and his eyes turned sharp. So these are the sovereigns of the Starry Sword Pavilion? If you attack, Yi Guqin will also take it. Although he was suppressed by the sovereigns, Yi Guqin's back was still straight. Hearing this, the surrounding crowd became noisy and disgusted. Zhou Heng's attack was already very unfair to Yi Guqin. If the sovereigns of the Starry Sword Pavilion bullied the weak, then they were really shameless. Who dares to bully my disciple? Feng Manlu also took a step forward and neutralized the auras of the 2 sovereigns. The 2 sovereigns furrowed their brows. Although Feng Manlu was only at the 7th level of the Divine Dwelling Realm, he gave them a faint sense of threat, which surprised them. However, at this moment, a deep voice sounded. A deep and cold voice came from afar again. Yi Guqin, you are really bold. You even dare to go against the Starry Sword Pavilion. No wonder you have the courage to kill the people of the Dongfang family. Everyone looked over and was instantly shocked. Another overlord force had arrived. Chapter 764. Before the first wave subsided, another wave came. Everyone was still stuck in the shocking scene of Yi Guqin defeating Zhou Heng. However, right at this moment, a flying ship flew over from afar. It was another overlord force that had arrived. It's the Dongfang family. The group of people looked over, and all of them were shocked and surprised. They didn't know what had happened. Logically speaking, The preliminaries shouldn't have alerted the Overlord forces. But now, the Overlord forces had arrived one after another. There were 4 people standing on the flying boat. A young man and a young woman, and 2 old men. The young girl was dressed in a purple gold robe. She was extremely beautiful. At this moment, she narrowed her beautiful eyes and looked at Yi Gu-chen, who was at the top of the Forbidden City. The red-robed man beside her had an oppressive aura. He was like the sun, emitting a scorching aura. They were Dongfang Shuri and Dongfang Xiun from the Dongfang family's side branch. The 2 old men behind them were also sovereigns from the side branch. The Dongfang family's side branch is here too. The sun rises from the east. They're the strongest among the 5 overlord families. I heard that the Heavenly God Sword sect only succeeded with the help of the Dongfang family and other forces. But judging from the Dongfang family's tone, did Yi Gu-chen kill someone from the Dongfang family? The arrival of the Dongfang family was shocking. But what was even more shocking was Dongfang Shuri's words. Yi Gu-chen actually killed someone from the Dongfang family. Dongfang Xiun. Yi Gu-chen furrowed his brows as he looked at Dongfang Xiun. He didn't expect the Dongfang family to come at the right time. The Dongfang family had to come at this critical moment. It was one disaster after another. So you're Yi Gu-chen? I thought you were from the Baiming family, but it seems like you've only received some inheritance. But since you had the courage to kill brother Dongfang Hong, you'll die today. Dongfang Xiun's eyes were cold. That's right. Anyone who kills someone from the Dongfang family has no way out, Dongfang Shuri said coldly. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Yi Gu-chen. A prodigy from a low-level empire had killed a disciple from an overlord-level force? Feng Manlu frowned slightly. The expressions of all the elders and disciples of the sword sect's forest of pagodas froze, and they were unsightly to the extreme. Yi Gu-chen had already offended the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. Even with wind-sweeping buildings protection, he still had a slim chance of survival. Now that the Dongfang family had arrived, they too wanted Yi Gu-chen dead. Who could stop the condemnation of 2 transcendent powers? Haha, Yi Gu-chen, the heavens want you dead today. The Xinghong Crown Prince laughed. He laughed very happily. Who would have thought that Yi Gu-chen, who was supposed to be the champion of the qualifiers, would end up in such a state? Dongfang Xiun, don't you know better than me how Dongfang Hong died? In the face of the Dongfang family's pressure, Yi Gu-chen remained fearless. I saw it with my own eyes. Don't tell me you still want to deny it? Dongfang Xiun's eyes flashed with coldness. Dongfang Hong had actually died indirectly in her hands, but Dongfang Shuri naturally wouldn't believe Yi Gu-chen's words. Ziyun, there's no need to talk to him anymore. Whoever kills the Dongfang family, no matter who it is, must die, let alone an ant from a low-level dynasty, Dongfang Shuri said calmly. Just as the Dongfang family was about to attack, a calm voice was heard. Friend from the Dongfang family, let the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion deal with this person. He won't live today. The person who spoke was naturally Song Yuyao. She wasn't speaking for Yi Gu-chen, but for Yi Gu-chen's defeat of Zhou Heng in front of everyone. If the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion didn't attack, they would lose all their face. All right. Dongfang Shuri nodded. After all, his purpose of coming here was to kill Yi Gu-chen. It didn't matter who killed him. Oh, the honorables of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion are going to attack? Yi Gu-chen's lips curled into a mocking smile. Little bastard, you're not worthy. The 2 honorables of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion heard, and their faces darkened. They were the deacons of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. If they really attacked Yi Gu-chen today, even if they killed Yi Gu-chen, their reputation would be tarnished. So, Yi Gu-chen's eyes turned sharp as he looked up at Song Yuyao. Song Yuyao, get down here. Yi Gu-chen pointed his sword at Song Yuyao, a cold, murderous intent flashing in his eyes. Zhou Tong was just a roadblock, an outsider. Yi Gu-chen's real target was Song Yuyao. He's going to challenge the pride of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion again? The rest of the people felt their scalps go numb. Today, Yi Gu-chen crushed the crown prince of the Great Star Dynasty and defeated Zhou Heng of the 7 Great Bears. Now, he was going to challenge Song Yuyao again. If even Song Yuyao was defeated by Yi Guchen, then 2 of the 7 great bears would be defeated by Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen would undoubtedly create a legend. If news of this spread, Yi Guchen would amaze the entire Nantian region. Of course, the premise was that Yi Guchen could escape death today. Song Yuyao's face changed when Yi Guchen pointed his sword at her. It was not because of fear, but because of anger. She was the pride of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, but someone dared to provoke her. Since you're courting death, then I'll kill you on behalf of junior brother Xiaoyang. Murderous intent surged in Song Yuyao's eyes. No matter what, Yi Guchen was the host of the Khanate Sword Embryo. If he was killed, the Khanate Sword Embryo would be completely refined by Gu Xiaoyang. Song Yuyao floated down, her eyes cold. With a flip of her hand, a slender jade sword fell into her hand. The Alcade Sword. Thousand Shadow Star God Sword. Song Yuyao released the aura of a 9th stage spirit bridge of heaven and earth and used her ultimate move. In an instant, Song Yuyao seemed to have pointed out 1,000 swords, which merged into one and turned into a giant starry sword light. Emperor-level sword art. Feeling the power of the sword art, everyone around was shocked. Song Yuyao used an emperor-level sword art right off the bat. Obviously, she wanted to kill Yi Guchen as easily as crushing dry weeds. Great Void Sword Wave, Void Destruction. Yi Guchen activated the Edgeless Sword intent and used the Great Void Sword Wave. The space shook, and the sword wave spread out like a wave, colliding with the starry sword light. The starry sword light broke through the sword wave. Although it was slightly weaker, it still fell on Yi Guchen. Yama. Yi Guchen released the Azura Sword Dao again, using the Yama sword technique. The blood-red sword light split the sky and collided with the starry sword light. Yi Guchen's body shook, and he retreated a few steps, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. After all, he had fought several battles in a row. Song Yuyao was waiting for him to be exhausted. In comparison, Song Yuyao had the upper hand. However, Yi Guchen's physical body was strong, and coupled with his ultimate sea of qi, this kind of consumption injury was not a big problem. Song Yuyao frowned slightly when she saw that she had failed to kill Yi Guchen with her sword. Back in the Tianhuang plain, Yi Guchen was like an ant that she could crush with a flick of her finger. But now, he blocked her sword that was comparable to an emperor-level sword art. You're done. Next, it's my turn. Yi Guchen slowly raised his sword, and a strange sword concept spread out. Swoosh. Yi Guchen attacked. It was a very slow sword, but it made everyone's hair stand on end. One sword, merciful heavens. Chapter 765. Yi Guchen's attack was very slow. It was so slow that everyone could clearly see the trajectory of Yi Guchen's attack. But it was this slow attack that made all the spectators' scalps go numb as they felt an extreme sense of danger. Pathos of Heaven was Yi Guchen's self-created sword move. Although it was only one move, it didn't hinder its power, especially the special sword concept that it carried. It was sad and poignant, causing one's heart to waver. It had the effect of affecting one's consciousness and soul. The strength of this effect varied from person to person. For someone like Gu Zun, who was cold and unfeeling, the pathos of Heaven concept couldn't affect him. But Song Yuyao was different. She was a woman after all. Most women valued love and would naturally resonate with it, especially Song Yuyao, who loved Gu Xiaoyang. Gu Xiaoyang, on the other hand, had brought the innate sword embryo to the Misty Sword Pavilion to meet Yi Zanyue. This caused cracks to appear in Song Yuyao's heart and made her feel sour. Yi Guchen's attack was undoubtedly Song Yuyao's nemesis. Song Yuyao felt as if she could see herself in Gu Xiaoyang when she sensed the sorrowful sword concept. In the outside world, a small number of people who weren't affected were stunned to see that Song Yuyao had a trace of infatuation on her face. She had no intention of dodging at all. Song Yuyao, wake up! At this moment, the 2 deacons in the skies suddenly shouted when they saw the situation. Song Yuyao instantly woke up and immediately sensed that the sword light was already in front of her. Heavenly Star Garment! Song Yuyao screamed as her expression changed. On the surface of her delicate body, a thin veil as thin as a cicada's wing appeared, carrying with it specks of light. It looked fragile, but it had an extremely strong defense. Boom! A violent explosion spread in all directions. Under everyone's gazes, Song Yuyao's delicate body rapidly retreated as an extremely strong recoil passed through the heavenly star garment and slammed into her delicate body. Song Yuyao's face was sickly red as she spat out a mouthful of blood. The pride of the Starry Sword Pavilion had been injured. Everyone was silent as shock froze on their faces. Dongfang Ziyun was also surprised. Why is that guy so much stronger than before? Although Yi Guchen wasn't weak in the heavenly wasteland plains, he wasn't as strong as he was now, which surprised her. Someone who can kill Dongfang Hong is indeed capable. Dongfang Shuri narrowed his eyes slightly. After sending Song Yuyao flying with a single sword strike, Yi Guchen did not have the slightest bit of joy in his eyes. If Song Yuyao didn't have the protection of the heavenly star silkworm robe and if the venerable deacon didn't wake her up, Song Yuyao would have been heavily injured or even died from this sword strike. At this moment, blood flowed out from the corners of Song Yuyao's mouth, and her hair was disheveled. Obviously, she was unable to maintain her cold and arrogant appearance from before. Is this your pitiful pride? Who gave you the right to act so high and mighty in front of me? Yi Guchen's eyes were cold as he walked towards Song Yuyao. Holding the sword hilt diagonally, the sword tip pointed diagonally towards the ground. With every step he took, his aura would skyrocket. His aura was as deep as the abyss. Damn it, Yi Guchen, I want you dead. Song Yuyao screamed, her eyes filled with hatred. She didn't expect that she would be injured by Yi Guchen in a moment of carelessness. This was unacceptable to her. Star Silkworm Silk. Song Yuyao held the Alcade sword in one hand and spread out the 5 fingers of her other hand. 5 transparent silk threads extended from her fingers. The star silkworm's silk sliced through the air, making a sharp hissing sound. Yi Guchen frowned slightly. As one of the 7 great bears, Song Yuyao was naturally at least a 7th grade sky pride. However, he didn't know what Song Yuyao's talent was. Could it be the star silkworm's silk? Yi Guchen thought to himself. Song Yuyao unleashed her full power at the 9th stage and charged forward. She used the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion's movement technique, the 7 star steps. Her figure instantly turned into 7 afterimages. Yi Guchen used the wave-like subtle steps, and his figure also turned into afterimages. At the same time, the power of his extreme sea of qi and chaotic sea of knowledge burst out. Although he was only at the pinnacle of the great profound martial realm, his strength was no weaker than a 4th or 5th stage sky pride of the heaven and earth spirit bridge. If he used his ancient god form, it would be enough to challenge a 7th or 8th stage sky pride. Chain Star Sword Art. Song Yuyao attacked again, and the sword paths overlapped as if forming a celestial body. Her other hand controlled the star silkworm silk at the same time, hiding in the void. It was extremely fast and unpredictable, making it difficult to lock onto with the naked eye. However, Yi Guchen's divine soul was extremely powerful, and he immediately sensed the restriction of the star silkworm silk. He moved sideways and unleashed the Shura Sword Dao's sword domain. The blood-red sword light filled the sky as the 18 Shura Blood Sea attacked Song Yuyao. Heavenly Star Silkworm Silk. Song Yuyao summoned the Heavenly Star Silkworm Silk again. What was strange was that this protective treasure directly turned into a celestial body and resisted the Shura Blood Sea's suppression. Star Silkworm Silk, Phantom Kill. Song Yuyao's eyes and beautiful face were cold. She didn't expect someone who was like an ant in her eyes to be able to fight her to this extent. This made Song Yuyao extremely displeased. The 5 strands of star silkworm silk that extended out and hid in the void immediately tightened, bursting out countless silkworm phantoms that surrounded Yi Guchen. If it were an ordinary person, they would definitely be restrained and then strangled. However, 108,000 swords. Yi Guchen's eyes were sharp, and the 108,000 heaven-ripping sword souls in his body were like dragons, shocking the world. Endless sword souls swept out in all directions like a torrent. The star silkworm silk, whether they were phantoms or real, were directly drowned in the torrent of sword souls. Moreover, the 100,000 sword souls didn't stop and swept violently towards Song Yuyao. Song Yuyao's expression changed again. Even she felt a trace of fear in the face of such a torrent of sword souls. The heavenly star silkworm's silk directly fell on her delicate body. However, the endless torrent of sword souls swept over and directly drowned Song Yuyao. Looking at Song Yuyao, who was swept into the torrent of sword souls, the hundreds of thousands of people around the forbidden Violet Mountain all fell silent, unable to make the slightest sound. With 108,000 sword souls at the same time, who could resist them? Senior Sister Song. Even the defeated Zhou Heng's expression changed. A deacon of the Starry Sword Pavilion's aura couldn't help but become violent. Song Yuyao's aura is still there. She won't be defeated so easily, another supremacy said calmly. Yi Guchen, you must die today. A shrill scream, accompanied by extreme anger, came from the torrent of sword souls. A powerful wave of energy suddenly spread out. Then, under everyone's astonished gazes, a huge star silkworm appeared. Countless star silkworms' silk violently surged out of the silkworm's body, intertwining and overlapping with each other to form a barrier that blocked the attack of the heaven-ripping sword souls. Song Yuyao's delicate body was exposed in the middle of the barrier. Although she was protected by the heavenly star silkworm silk, she was still coughing up blood and was severely injured. There were wounds on her jade-like arms. At this moment, her beautiful red eyes were filled with hatred and resentment as she coldly stared at Yi Guchen. All of her aloofness and arrogance were shattered at this moment. There was only endless shame and anger left. She was in such a sorry state in the hands of Yi Guchen. Chapter 766. This is Song Yuyao's gifted superpower? Yi Guchen was slightly surprised to see the star silkworm emerging from Song Yuyao's body. The star silkworm was several feet long. Its entire body was milky white, and its back was covered in starlight spots. It looked extremely strange. Song Yuyao's gifted superpower was this star silkworm that was born in her dantian. Song Yuyao's heavenly star silk and heavenly star silk were all provided by the star silkworm. The star silkworm could absorb the power of the stars to aid Song Yuyao's cultivation. It could be said that all of Song Yuyao's assets as a 7th grade prodigy were on this star silkworm. Song Yuyao would never use this star silkworm unless she had no other choice. Yi Guchen, no one can save you today. You will die without a doubt. Song Yuyao screamed, her pretty face filled with anger. Being trampled on by an ant in her eyes, Song Yuyao's mood could be imagined. The star silkworm seemed to feel its host's anger. Its milky white body turned red as if it had entered a state of rage. Next, to everyone's shock, the star silkworm also released the aura of a peak 5th grade demonic beast, which was equivalent to a human spiritual bridge stage. The star silkworm hissed and released its aura. Its entire body rushed toward Yi Guchen, spitting out star silk. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. He raised his hand, and endless 5-colored runes spread out. Emperor Jin, Emperor Qing, Emperor Black, Emperor Crimson, and Emperor Yellow. 5 swords of array appeared. The 5 Emperors' Cosmos sword array was activated. At the same time, an illusory 5-element sword field was used to imprison the star silkworm. The 5 swords of array bombarded the star silkworm one after another. The star silkworm's body was covered in a layer of starlight like a shell. It blocked the attack of the swords of array and burst out endless sparks. Seeing this, Song Yuyao attacked again with the Alcade sword, while Yi Guchen blocked with his sword. The battle became white-hot again. Song Yuyao unleashed her stage 9 combat strength, wanting to suppress Yi Guchen. However, Yi Guchen let out a long roar, and countless light patterns bloomed on the surface of his body as he activated his ancient god form. His physical strength increased 5-fold, and his aura soared once again. Even though Song Yuyao had the advantage of cultivation level, Yi Guchen's physical body and various techniques were too powerful. For a moment, they were in a stalemate. Senior Song, you won't lose, right? Not far away, Zhou Heng's heart pounded. Among the 7 great bears, only he and Song Yuyao had yet to reach the divine dwelling stage. He was the weakest of the 7 sons. Even so, he wasn't someone that ordinary dynasty prodigies could afford to offend. Damn it. In the middle of the battle, Song Yuyao's face was cold, but her heart was extremely depressed. The person in front of her, whom she had not taken seriously and whose name she had almost forgotten, had displayed enough strength to contend against her at this moment. A proud and arrogant woman like Song Yuyao would naturally feel embarrassed and angry. I must kill him in one move. Song Yuyao's eyes flashed with killing intent. She had also noticed that Yi Guchen's body was incredibly strong. If they fought for a long time, it would only be disadvantageous for her. Thinking of this, Song Yuyao gathered the qi in her body and at the same time sensed with the star silkworm. The star silkworm seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. With a hiss, endless star silkworm silk erupted from its body and rushed in all directions, temporarily breaking through the 5 Emperors' Cosmos sword formation. Of course, the star shell on the star silkworm's body also cracked and many cracks appeared. Star God Seclusion, all creation one move. The star silkworm's power was all added to Song Yuyao's body. Her whole body floated up, and her delicate body was bathed in dazzling starlight. Her aura surged as if she wanted to soar into the stars. Senior Sister Song wants to decide the battle in one move, Zhou Heng muttered to himself. He even used this move. That arrogant and unruly little bastard is going to die soon. The 2 venerable deacons of the Starry Sword Pavilion couldn't help but sneer. Hundreds of thousands of people around the Forbidden Mountain were also nervously watching. After all, Song Yuyao's identity was very sensitive and attracted a lot of attention. News of this battle would definitely spread. Yi Guchen? Yen Wushuang clenched her jade-like hands and prayed. She didn't ask for Yi Guchen to defeat Song Yuyao. She only hoped that he could survive. Senior brother Yi. The other disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest were also watching. Kenpo, Princess Feng Shi, and the others were also watching. Even the Vermilion Bird Jade, Yu Wenin, and the others were watching. At the peak of the Forbidden Mountain, the power of the stars surged. Song Yuyao seemed to have turned into light, and her delicate body turned into a ray of light. Song Yuyao's cold voice filled with killing intent came from within the light. I said that you'll only be junior brother Xiaoyang's stepping stone for the rest of your life. This is your fate. Rather than living in pain and humiliation, why don't you let me free you? Song Yuyao raised the Alcade sword high, and an extremely dazzling starlight sword light illuminated the sky. Sword Qi whistled. Even the top prodigies like Xinghong Crown Prince were shocked when they saw this sword. They wouldn't be able to survive this sword. Xin, it's over. It seems like we don't have to do anything. Dongfang Shuri shook his head and prepared to leave. Indeed. Dongfang Ziyun's lips had a trace of mockery. As expected of an ant from a small dynasty that only knew how to struggle before death. The intense sword light in the sky was accompanied by intense wind pressure. It caused Yi Guchen's clothes to stick tightly to his skin. However, there wasn't the slightest bit of fear on his face. I'll decide my own fate. Yi Guchen put away the Xianming heavy sword as if he was preparing a terrifying sword technique. What's wrong with Yi Guchen? He even put away his sword. Is he waiting for death? Everyone was shocked when they saw Yi Guchen put away his sword. Silly boy. Su Jianshi bit her lips as her heart tightened. The human emperor sword in her heart hummed along with her master's emotions. Although she wanted to help, she knew that Yi Guchen had his own pride. He wasn't willing to let others interfere in this battle. Under everyone's shocked gaze, Yi Guchen raised his left hand. Endless blood-red sword light soared into the sky as if it was setting off a bloody storm. God-slaying sword technique. Then, Yi Guchen raised his right hand. Sword light illuminated the sky as if a group of immortals had fallen. Yi Guchen's eyes seemed to reflect the scene of gods and demons weeping blood. God-slaying sword technique and immortal-slaying sword technique were used at the same time. However, that wasn't all. Yi Guchen's figure slowly floated into the sky. Facing Song Yuyao's fatal sword, Yi Guchen didn't dodge. Instead, he was going to meet it head-on. Song Yuyao, what I want today isn't my life, but your life. God-slaying sword technique, Permitha. Blood-red sword chi gushed out of Yiguchen's hand as he became one with the sword. Immortal slaying sword technique, immortal fall. With another sentence, the sword radiance surged into the 9 heavens. Then, under everyone's shocked gazes, Yiguchen slowly put his hands together as an unparalleled sword chi brewed from the extreme collision. Rumble. Thunder rumbled in the sky as the entire forbidden violet mountain trembled. Countless immortals' phantoms appeared. The immortals bled. The immortals fell. Cried. A sword light soared through the sky. It divided heaven and earth and cut through the vast expanse. The immortals cried. Chapter 767. God slaying and immortal slaying were sword techniques that originated from the Baiming family. When the two were combined, it would become the emperor-level sword technique, Immortal God's Weep. Generally speaking, it was very difficult to combine these two sword techniques. It was almost impossible. However, Yiguchen could do it. With the sword demon talent, the tree of enlightenment, and the union of man and sword, Yiguchen finally comprehended these two sword techniques to the extreme and combined them into Immortal God's Weep. A sword slashed across the sky, as if an immortal god's shadow had appeared. The entire sky seemed to have turned blood red. The immortal god's shadow wept and wailed, as if it was a demonstration of the power of this sword. Even Dongfang Shuri and the others who were about to leave suddenly turned around with a look of extreme surprise on their faces. Even he felt an extreme sense of danger from that sword. Boom! Song Yuyao and Yi Guchen's ultimate moves collided. It wasn't as deafening as expected. Instead, it was temporarily lost in sound. Heaven and earth seemed to have lost all sound. Only the two powerful sword rays collided with each other and dissipated. Then, under everyone's full attention, Yi Guchen's Immortal God's Weep broke Song Yuyao's sword light. Then, it directly split the star silkworm into two. With a scream, Song Yuyao's figure fell from the sky. Her heavenly star silkworm robe was also directly shattered. She collapsed in the pit, blood gushing out of her red lips. Song Yuyao was defeated. At this moment, heaven and earth were silent. All the spectators' mouths were dry, and their backs were dripping with cold sweat. Today, they had witnessed a miracle. An unprecedented miracle. A person from a low-level dynasty had defeated the heaven's pride of a top-level dynasty. He had even defeated the heaven's pride of an overlord-level faction. He won. Senior brother Yi won. All the disciples of the sword sect's pagoda forest roared wildly. Although Yi Guchen had left the sect, he was still their senior brother in their hearts. Their senior brother of the sword sect had created an unprecedented legend. From now on, Yi Guchen's name would spread throughout the entire Nantian region. Senior sister Song lost? Zhou Heng's heart trembled. Dongfang Shuri and Dongfang Ziyun were even more shocked. Although Dongfang Shuri was the #1 prodigy of the Dongfang family, he was only at the peak of the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. Even if he wanted to defeat Song Yuyao, it would not be such a simple matter. Cough, cough. In the pit, Song Yuyao kept coughing up blood. Her star silkworm had been destroyed by Yi Guchen's sword. In other words, Song Yuyao's innate divine ability was gone, and she would completely fall from the divine altar. Yi Guchen. Song Yuyao's eyes were filled with hatred and anger. Her jade-like face was ashen, and her eyes were murderous. Just at this moment, Yi Guchen, who was high up in the sky, took advantage of the opportunity to descend with lightning speed. "What are you doing?" Song Yuyao was shocked. Yi Guchen didn't say a word. With a flip of his wrist, the Xianming heavy sword carried the force of 1,000 caddies. He swung it down towards Song Yuyao, who was in the pit. This scene shocked everyone. Even the two deacons of the starry sword pavilion in the sky didn't react for a moment. It wasn't that they were slow, but that they didn't expect Yi Guchen to come back with such a move. "How dare you!" Song Yuyao screamed. Her cold and arrogant face, which had always been high up in the air, was now distorted by extreme fear. The resentment in his eyes had also turned into deep fear. "Let's not talk about my life for now, but your life will be ended by me." Yi Guchen's words, which were full of killing intent, reached Song Yuyao's ears. Song Yuyao's face was pale. She struggled to get up in disbelief. But how could she, who was seriously injured, escape Yi Guchen's sudden fatal blow? "Little bastard, how dare you!" The two deacons also reacted, but they were a little far away. They immediately shouted. Yi Guchen ignored them and swung his sword at Song Yuyao. "If you dare to kill me, the Starry Sword Pavilion won't let you go. Junior brother Xiaoyang won't let you go either." Song Yuyao finally revealed a look of extreme fear. She no longer had the slightest bit of pride in front of Yi Guchen. All she had was the despair of waiting for the god of death's judgment. Boom! There was no soft-heartedness or hesitation. Yi Guchen's Xianming heavy sword landed on Song Yuyao's delicate body ruthlessly. A series of cracking sounds followed by a dull sound rang out. Song Yuyao's internal organs, including her bones and tendons, were instantly shattered. A mouthful of blood mixed with crushed internal organs was spat out from Song Yuyao's red lips. Her beautiful eyes were wide open as she stared blankly at Yi Guchen. Her eyes were still filled with fear and disbelief. She would never believe that Yi Guchen dared to kill her in front of so many people. "Your life is only a little bit of interest. Go to hell and wait for Gu Xiaoyang." Yi Guchen muttered to himself in a cold tone as he looked at Song Yuyao, who was lying in a pool of blood. Her pupils were dilated and her vitality was fading away. From the moment Song Yuyao arrived, Yi Zichen had been stunned. Yi Guchen had already decided to kill her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left the sect. Because Gu Xiaoyang was destined to be his mortal enemy. Since Song Yuyao was destined to stand by Gu Xiaoyang's side, it would be good for Yi Guchen to remove one of her claws as soon as possible. However, Yi Guchen's action made the faces of hundreds of thousands of people freeze. An incomparable look of shock appeared on everyone's faces. Yi Guchen, in front of hundreds of thousands of people. In front of the deacons of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Killed Song Yuyao? This was simply poking a hole in the sky. What kind of existence was the Starry Sword Pavilion? It was an overlord force that had stood in the South Horizon region for tens of thousands of years. It was a top existence that had a heavenly tribulation saint. Killing one of the 7 great bears of the Starry Sword Pavilion in front of so many people. Everyone could only think of one result. It was death. Yi Guchen was definitely going to die. Not to mention wind-sweeping building, even a top empire or 10 top empires together wouldn't be able to save Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen is really going to poke a hole in the sky. Some martial artists took a deep breath. He killed senior sister Song. Zhou Heng was also stunned. He froze on the spot and felt a lingering fear. Yi Guchen had attacked him at that time. Zhou Heng shuddered in disbelief. The two venerable deacons also couldn't believe it. Their faces froze at first, then a furious scarlet color appeared in their eyes. "You little bastard, you're courting death." The two deacons were seething with anger. They were angry not only because Yi Guchen had killed Song Yuyao. They were also angry because Yi Guchen's action was tantamount to looking down on the Starry Sword Pavilion. One of the venerables directly attacked without any scruples. He didn't care about his face or his status. He just wanted Yi Guchen to die. "Starry Sword Pavilion, if you want to come, then come. I, Yi Guchen, am not afraid of anyone." Yi Guchen's black hair fluttered in the wind as his aura surged. Chapter 768. Boom. A deafening sound reverberated throughout the entire Forbidden City. Everyone was still in a state of deep disbelief. They couldn't believe that Yi Guchen dared to do this. He's dead. Yi Guchen is dead for sure. No one can save him. Xinghong Crown Prince was so excited that his face turned red. With Yi Guchen's talent, he could have risen to power. However, he was so stupid to do such a thing. Yi Guchen killed an overlord's disciple in front of so many people. There was no way he could survive in the South Sky region. How many dynasties had been wiped out by overlord forces? Not to mention that Yi Guchen was only at the life and death chamber. The deafening sound echoed in all directions. Everyone looked at the place where the smoke and dust had dissipated. Yi Guchen couldn't have been killed with one palm, right? Some warriors looked at the Forbidden City. "Stupid kid. Su Jianshi cried out. Her body flashed as she charged at Yi Guchen. Brother Yi, sister Su. Shui was also in the crowd. She wanted to rush out, but she was stopped by Ji Ling. Yi Guchen. Yan Wushuang's expression changed as she also wanted to rush out. Come back. Yan Chang'e stopped Yan Wushuang. Yan Chang'e had the responsibility of a sect master. He couldn't let Yan Wushuang and the other disciples go to waste. Brother Yi. Many disciples of the sword sect pagoda choked and clenched their fists. Deacon Zhenggu should have killed that little bastard with one palm. High up in the sky, Deacon Li Kuang said coldly. His eyes were still filled with anger. Now that Song Yuyao was dead, the two deacons who had escorted her here would also be severely punished. Yi Guchen is really daring. He even dares to kill someone from the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. On the other side, Dongfang Ziyun's lips curled into a cold smile. Looks like we don't have to do anything today. That kid is probably dead by now. TSK, he does have some skills, but it's a pity that he's too reckless and brainless. Dongfang Shuri sneered and shook his head. The hundreds of thousands of people fell silent at this moment. The deacons of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion were all at the Venerable Realm. It was impossible for Yi Guchen to survive. However, when the smoke and dust dissipated, everyone's pupils shrank in that instant. In front of Yi Guchen, Feng Manlu, who was dressed in plain clothes, stretched out his hand and blocked Zhenggu's attack. Do you think you can kill my disciple as you please? Feng Manlu stood straight and blocked Deacon Zhenggu's attack with his palm. A gust of wind blew across Lulu's forehead. At this moment, those blind eyes seemed to contain a cold arrogance that could suppress the heavens. It was like a peerless sword that could shake the world. It was blocked by wind-sweeping tower. After a brief moment of dead silence, there was an uproar like a stormy sea. Wind-sweeping tower, he really attacked. Everyone was stunned and their eyes popped out. It should be said that Feng Manlu's cultivation was only at the 7th level of the Divine Dwelling Realm, but he blocked Deacon Zhenggu's attack. Even Deacon Zhenggu looked a little surprised. His strength was indeed not high among the deacons of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. He was only at the 2nd level of the Venerable Realm. But no matter what, he was still a Venerable. Yet, he was blocked by a 7th level of the Divine Dwelling Realm. This made Zhenggu feel ashamed and angry. Today, Yi Guchen must pay with his life for killing my disciple. How dare you make an enemy of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion? Zhenggu roared angrily. Not to mention the 7th level of the Divine Dwelling Realm, even top venerables and saints would be wary of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. So what if you're from the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion? Even if a saint comes, don't think of making me take a step back. Feng Manlu's tone was firm and calm, but it contained an incomparable domineering aura. This was the pride of a sword cultivator. This was the confidence of an expert. You're courting death. Zhenggu was furious. He attacked again. His vigorous Venerable Realm Qi turned into a giant handprint that pressed down on Feng Manlu and Yi Guchen. Feng Manlu's long hair fluttered as endless sword light soared from his body. He was like a peerless sword that could cut through the heavens. With his Divine Dwelling Realm cultivation, he defied the heavens to fight a venerable. Zhenggu wasn't someone who had just become a venerable like Xian Wuji. Even if he was only at the 2nd level of the Venerable Realm, his strength was far stronger than Xian Wuji. Coupled with the many cultivation techniques and martial arts of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, Zhenggu's strength was very powerful. Boom! A great battle began. Su Jianshi landed beside Yi Guchen. She threw herself into Yi Guchen's arms, her jade-like arms hugging Yi Guchen's body tightly. Silly boy, don't do this again. Don't do this again. Su Jianshi's eyes were red as she cried. At the same time, she felt incomparably scared. Zhenggu's attack was too sudden. If Feng Manlu had not been able to block it in time, he would not have been able to escape. Su Jianshi didn't dare to imagine the consequences. It's okay. We'll be fine today. Yi Guchen stroked Su Jianshi's back. He still had one last trick up his sleeve. Blackie, come here. Yi Guchen tilted his head and shouted. Everyone thought that Yiguchen was reckless and brainless. But was that really the case? Yiguchen didn't have any real tricks up his sleeve. Why would he attack? Blackie heard Yiguchen's call and squeaked in the crowd of Sword Sect's forest of pagodas. Why did Yi call you silly monkey? Are you going to fight the venerables of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion? At the side, the divine condor cursed silently, but it still grabbed Blackie with its claws, flapped its wings, and flew towards Yiguchen. But at this moment, Li Sun, the other deacon of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, had a murderous look in his eyes. He didn't say a word and directly released his Venerable Realm aura. 4th level of the Venerable Realm. He was even more powerful than Jinggu. Little bastard, you won't be able to live after killing the people of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. Li Sun's voice was majestic and carried an unparalleled chilling murderous intent. It spread for hundreds of miles. There was a loud bang. Li Sun stretched out his hand and condensed his vigorous true energy into a huge palm print that covered the sky. It smashed toward Yiguchen. He wanted to kill Yiguchen with one palm. Oh no. Yiguchen's heart skipped a beat. The palm was too fast and didn't give Yiguchen any time to react. In less than a breath's time, the huge palm print smashed toward Yiguchen and Su Jianshi. But at this moment, Su Jianshi turned her head and glanced at Yiguchen. Her eyes were filled with infatuation and determination. Silly boy, you've always been protecting me. Today I'll also, sword sweeps the world. Sword of the human sovereign. Su Jianshi chanted. She didn't hesitate. Even if she was exposed and Di Haoyan sensed her location, it didn't matter. Because she wanted Yiguchen to live. Boom. An indescribably terrifying golden light burst out from Su Jianshi's body. An ancient golden sword appeared in Su Jianshi's heart and expanded. It was as if it could destroy the world and suppress the heavens. The sword of the human sovereign had reappeared. Chapter 769. Countless runes and patterns flowed on the surface of the ancient golden sword. It was as if countless human epics were manifesting within it. The decline of dynasties, the rise of the sun, and the fall of the moon. The human sovereign sword was an immemorial sacred weapon forged by an immemorial divine craftsman known as Xianyuan Peerless, the god of the 9 heavens. It was also 1/3 of the Triemperor's sacred artifact, ranked 7th on the Earth ranking. It possessed unimaginable power. The reason why the Starry Sword Pavilion was able to rank among the overlords was because of this sword. The 7-star Dragon Abyss ranked 12th on the Earth ranking. Although the human emperor's sword was only 1/3 of the Triemperor's sacred artifact, its power was still boundless. Su Jianshi hadn't used the full power of the human emperor's sword before because she was afraid that Di Haoyan would detect it. But it didn't matter now. Su Jianshi would do anything to keep Yiguchen alive. Human Emperor's Chapter, Heart of Heaven and Earth. Su Jianshi roared as her hair danced in the wind and was covered in a layer of gold. At the same time, her bright and clear eyes turned into a pure gold color. They were like the eyes of an emperor looking down on all life. Su Jianshi had completely activated the power of the human emperor's sword. The chanting of the human emperor's sword seemed to come from the void. Heart of heaven and earth, life of all life, no. Yiguchen's expression changed. He knew that Su Jianshi couldn't fully activate the human emperor's sword with her current strength. The price she had to pay was very heavy. A trace of blood flowed down from the corner of Su Jianshi's mouth. Her eyes were dyed pure gold as tears of blood flowed down. But when the sword struck out, it was silent. The entire place was dead silent. Countless pairs of shocked eyes looked at the top of the forbidden city. The ancient golden sword gently tore through the void. It was as if countless figures had appeared, emitting boundless golden light. With a sweep of his sword, he directly broke apart Li Sun's palm imprint and continued to attack Li Sun without any reduction in power. How can this be? Li Sun screamed as she unleashed her full strength. She used countless trump cards and took out her armor. Rumble. It was as if the heavens were trembling. The golden sword light completely illuminated the sky. Heaven and earth were filled with a blazing golden brilliance. Everyone was shocked and speechless. At this moment, his heart seemed to have stopped beating. What did they see? A young girl at the life and death chamber realm was waving her sword at Li Sun, who was at the fourth sky of venerable realm. Furthermore, he had broken through Li Sun's attack. Everyone was dumbfounded and stood rooted to the ground. All that was left was deep shock and disbelief. Pucci! At the place where the sword ray struck, the sound of blood being violently vomited could be heard, as well as a furious roar. Damn it, who the hell are you? When the light dissipated, Li Meng's figure appeared. When they saw Li Sun's figure appear, everyone's eyes froze. Li Sun's body, from her shoulder to her abdomen, had a huge blood-colored wound. Blood kept flowing out, and even her wriggling internal organs could be seen. His aura was extremely weak, and his chin was covered in blood. In his ferocious eyes, apart from rage and fury, there was also a deep fear. What kind of sword did that girl use? Feeling the power of the ancient golden sword floating above Su Jianshir's head, the 400,000 to 500,000 people present were all stunned. It was as if millions of thunderbolts were rumbling in their minds. That's... Even Dongfang Shuri and Dongfang Ziyun gasped. Their eyes were filled with extreme fear. They had thought that Yi Guchen was already extremely strong. In the end, this unknown girl beside him was the most heaven-defying character. Cough. However, after using the sword, Su Jianshir suddenly coughed up a large mouthful of blood. Her face was extremely pale, and her delicate body trembled. The human sovereign sword also returned to Su Jianshir's body. Yi Guchen flashed and hugged Su Jianshir's slender waist. Su Jianshir, are you all right? Yi Guchen hurriedly looked at her. Su Jianshir fainted. Her snow-white chin was covered in blood, and tears of blood flowed from the corners of her eyes. Her body had been overdrawn to the limit. Yi Guchen hurriedly sent some pills and ancient god blood into Su Jianshir's body. Even so, it could only alleviate her pain for a while. You all deserve to die. Yi Guchen's eyes were focused, and his killing intent shook the heavens. Every cell in his body seemed to emit flames of fury that wanted to burn the heavens. Two elders, that girl must have a secret. In the Dongfang family's camp, Dongfang Shuri's eyes were filled with greed as he looked at Su Jianshir. She was only in the life and death realm, and she had relied on the ancient golden sword to heavily injure a fourth-level sovereign. This was simply shocking and unbelievable. Could that be the human sovereign sword? However, one of the two honorable elders from the Dongfang family exclaimed in astonishment. What? The human sovereign sword? Dongfang Shuri's expression froze. Dongfang Ziyun's face was also filled with shock. That's right, it's definitely the human sovereign sword. Back then, the heavenly god sword sect joined forces, including my Dongfang family, to destroy the Su family in order to obtain the human sovereign sword. I heard that the human sovereign sword is with the genius saint, Su Qingyu's daughter, Su Jianshir. Could it be this girl? The Dongfang family's sovereign spoke with excitement in his eyes. Although they were only a side branch of the Dongfang family, they knew a little about the destruction of the Su family. If that's the case, then all the more we must obtain it. That's 1/3 of the 3 sovereign saint swords. If we obtain it, then the side branch of the Dongfang family will also rise, and we won't be any weaker than the main branch. Dongfang Shuri's eyes were filled with passion. The main branch of the Dongfang family also had an ancient famed sword. However, the side branch not only had a low status, but they also didn't have an ancient famed sword. All right, we must obtain this sword. The two sovereigns of the Dongfang family looked at each other and stepped out. Fellow Taoist of the Starry Sword Pavilion, let us help you. The two Dongfang family elders stepped out. This time, everyone was shocked. The Dongfang family also attacked. Damn it! Li Sun's eyes darkened. However, how could he not know that the ancient golden sword was definitely extraordinary? Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to injure him, a fourth heaven venerable. Li Sun and the two Dongfang family elders rushed toward Yi Guchen. Jinggu, on the other hand, was fighting with Feng Manlu. Good, very good. All of you, come at me. What sovereigns? What overlords? Today, I, Yi Guchen, will slaughter all of you. Yiguchen's hair stood on end, and his eyes turned scarlet. These overlords treated him and Su Jianshi like fish on a chopping board and could be easily slaughtered. However, Yiguchen was not a soft persimmon that anyone could bully. An extremely terrifying killing intent swept through the nine heavens imperial court, shaking the heavens and earth. Who cares if they're sovereigns? Who cares if they're sovereigns? I'll kill them all. Yiguchen's anger was like an erupting volcano. It burned the entire area and even the sky. Today, all of you will die. Yiguchen's eyes were scarlet red. Blackie also came to his side. Just as Yiguchen was about to release Blackie's seal, an indescribably terrifying sword ray emerged from Yiguchen's body. This sword light caused the heavens to tremble. It cut through the void. This is... Yiguchen's eyes narrowed. Chapter 770. Back then, Yiguchen had left a sword mark on the one-sword cliff in the inner courtyard of the Sword Sect's Forest of Pagodas. The three sword gleams entered Yiguchen's body at the same time. Yiguchen knew that the sword gleams were left behind by the 8th-generation Sword Sect's Yi Tianqing. It was one of the opportunities prepared for the 9th-generation Sword Sect's echelon. 3 sword gleams. One was to help when he was breaking through. One was to help when he was risking his life. One was to help when he was on the brink of death. When Yiguchen broke through the limit of his Sea of Qi, the first sword gleam appeared and helped him break through. Now, Yiguchen was enraged because of Su Jianshi's injury. The raging fury that wanted to burn the 8 desolates and 9 worlds, and the aura of risking his life completely triggered the sword gleam that was dormant in Yiguchen's body. The second sword gleam left behind by the 8th-generation Sword Sect's Yi Tianqing appeared. The sword gleam's terrifying fluctuation was indescribable. It was like the most terrifying light in the world, enough to blind everyone's eyes. As the sword gleam appeared, a figure shrouded in light spoke with a faint voice. The second sword gleam helped when he was risking his life. The figure was shrouded in endless divine light, making it impossible to see his face or figure. But the faint voice seemed to spread throughout the 3 realms. It was an indescribable feeling. It was like an ant facing a giant dragon. Even a celestial palace honorable was like an ant in front of this illusory figure. They had no power to resist. This voice, Little Fatty, who was in the Sword Sect's Forest of Pagodas, suddenly froze. It was familiar. The figure calmly extended a finger and pointed forward. The unparalleled sword gleam that seemed to be able to cut through the void and shot toward Li Sun and the 2 supremacies of the Dongfang family. Wherever it passed, the void silently collapsed, revealing pitch-black spatial turbulence. The only time Yiguchen saw the void shattering was when the Heavenly Eye Monarch and the chaotic world Demonic Ape fought. Now, Yi Tianqing's figure stretched out a finger, and a sword gleam shattered the endless void. What kind of supreme power was this? No. What is this? The faces of Li Sun and the 2 elders of the Dongfang family were extremely distorted at this moment, as if they had seen something extremely terrifying. The aura of that illusory figure gave them the illusion that they were looking at the pavilion master of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion and the patriarch of the Dongfang family. No, he was even stronger than them, reaching a heaven-defying level. No! Nothing could stop this sword light. Li Sun and the 2 elders of the Dongfang family could only let out extremely terrified screams. Immediately after, they were annihilated by the sword ray into particles smaller than dust and dissipated between heaven and earth. This, even Yiguchen was stunned. The power of this sword ray exceeded his imagination. After releasing the sword ray, the shadow turned into a rain of light and dissipated. The blazing light between heaven and earth dissipated. Only then did everyone regain their vision. However, there was nothing left. In the area where Li Sun and the 2 elders were, there was only a slowly closing spatial crack. Nothing else existed. The 3 powerful martial highnesses were annihilated without a sound, as if they were never there. Not even their corpses were left behind. Hiss! The hundreds of thousands of people present froze on the spot. Countless gasps could be heard from all directions. Those were 3 martial highnesses. They were not just any Tom, Dick, or Harry, but martial highnesses of the Heavenly Palace, who were considered absolute powerhouses in the entire South Sky region. They were annihilated with a single sword stroke. Shocking. Unparalleled madness. This was Yi Guchen's doing? Princess Feng Shi, who had always been shrewd and never revealed her true feelings, covered her red lips with both hands at this moment. Her eyes were wide open, and she was unprecedentedly shocked. Then, what kind of technique was that? Kenpo was stunned. Even the top powerhouses of the Sword Dynasty and Sword Dao Alliance would not be able to display such a terrifying sword stroke. A miracle. I definitely saw a miracle today. Some sword cultivators even knelt on the ground and cried bitterly. There were also sword cultivators who were kowtowing and worshipping. That sword ray stunned the 9 heavens and 10 lands. But who would have thought that it was only one of the 3 sword rays left behind by Yi Tianxing? How strong is Yi Tianxing, the 8th generation sword master? What kind of shocking inheritance is the sword faction? Even with Yi Guchen's sword demon nature, he could not help but take a deep breath at this moment. When he had subdued the heaven-ripping sword soul in the sword-seeking steel, he had seen Yi Tianxing's consciousness clone. It looked like an extremely ordinary middle-aged man who could not be picked out in a crowd. He did not expect his true technique to be so powerful. But now, Yi Guchen's crisis was finally resolved for the time being. He had killed 3 martial highnesses with a single sword ray. A group of people would be scared to death if this spread out. And most importantly, no one knew the origin of the sword ray in Yi Guchen's body. Could this be Yi Guchen's technique? How is it possible? Yi Guchen's strength is only at the hidden latch of life and death. Even if he started cultivating in his mother's womb, he can't be so strong to this extent. But what's with that sword ray? Everyone was shocked. Dongfang Shuri and Dongfang Xiun seemed to have been petrified together with their bodies and souls. They stood straight and choked, unable to make any sound. Prince Xinghong's face turned pale as if he had been struck by lightning. There were 2 martial highnesses of the Sky Star Dynasty beside him. If it were not for the fact that the Sky Star Dynasty was not strong enough to compete with the Dongfang family and the Starry Sword Pavilion for the human sovereign sword, they would probably have joined in. However, Yi Guchen had killed 3 martial highnesses with a single sword strike, which was really shocking. The 2 martial highnesses of the Sky Star Dynasty trembled as if they had been struck dumb. No. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. On the other side, Deacon Jinggu, who was fighting with Feng Manlu, also had his eyes wide open. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Li Sun, who was stronger than him, had been killed with a single sword strike? Yi Guchen's eyes turned to Zhenggu. Zhenggu's heart skipped a beat, as if he was a prey being targeted by a hunter. After throwing out a palm strike, he immediately retreated. Damn it! You killed the martial highnesses of the Starry Sword Pavilion. You must all die. Zhenggu roared as he retreated. This caused everyone to feel a sense of dizziness, and they were about to faint. The deacon of the Starry Sword Pavilion, an overlord force, had slipped away like a mouse. Deacon? Zhou Heng was also frozen on the spot, his face pale. Next, let's go there. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. Although the sword ray had intimidated everyone, it was only a simple thought. However, if one thought about it, one would realize that it was not Yi Guchen's power. Yi Guchen couldn't have used such a technique consecutively. Therefore, Yi Guchen had to find a way out for himself. Yi Guchen already had a place in mind. He had to go there before leaving the Saint Origin dynasty. Master, let's leave. Yi Guchen hugged the unconscious Su Jianshi and said to Feng Manlu. Feng Manlu nodded slightly. The divine condor grabbed Blackie and followed Yi Guchen. And that little fatty, with a flash of his body, followed Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen and the others turned into streaks of light and flew into the distance. 15 minutes after Yi Guchen left, the hundreds of thousands of people woke up from their daze. Instantly, an earth-shattering uproar broke out. It wasn't hard to imagine that what had happened today would spread throughout the dynasty and even cause a huge storm in the South Horizon region. Chapter 771. What did I just see? Have I gone mad? or has the world gone mad? Everyone went mad, especially the disciples of the Sword Sect's Forest of Towers. They were practically on the verge of howling. Their sect's eldest senior brother had killed 3 supremacies in an instant. And they were all from overlord forces. This was a kind of refreshing feeling to his heart's content. Let you be high and mighty? Let you decide who lives and who dies as you please? Those who viewed Yiguchen as meat on the chopping block, whether it was Song Yuyao or Li Sun, were all dead. Senior brother Yi can really create miracles. Ji Ling, Chu Qingqi, and the others were also shocked. They felt as if their blood was about to boil. Yiguchen was really going against fate. Yiguchen? Yan Wushuang's heart was shaken and filled with emotion. But there was no doubt that Yiguchen had become an unerasable mark in her heart. But she also felt bitter because compared to Su Jianshi, her contribution to Yiguchen was insignificant. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Dongfang Shuri's face turned purple as he cursed 3 times in a row. Although they were members of the Dongfang family, they were only a branch family and didn't have many sovereigns in the Celestial Palace. But now 2 of them had died. Dongfang Shuri was about to go crazy, his eyes red. Brother Shuri, what should we do? Dongfang Ziyun was also flustered. She wanted to use Yiguchen as a scapegoat, but she didn't expect Yiguchen to have such a trick up his sleeve. Damn it, it's all your fault, you bitch. If it weren't for your instigation, I wouldn't have come here, and the 2 elders wouldn't have died like this. Dongfang Shuri couldn't help but slap Dongfang Ziyun's face. Dongfang Ziyun was sent flying. Her pretty face was swollen and bruised. She gritted her teeth. Her internal organs were burning with anger, but she didn't dare show it. But at this moment, Deacon Jinggu, who had fled far away, returned. Where is that little bastard? Zhenggu's expression turned even uglier when he sensed the strange and obscure gazes around him. As a deacon of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, he was actually scared away by a prodigy from a low-level dynasty. If this were to spread out, Zhenggu's face would be completely lost. But just now, Zhenggu was really scared. After all, even Li Gui, whose cultivation was higher than his, was killed by a single sword strike. But after thinking about it carefully, Zhenggu realized something. It was impossible for Yiguchen to continuously use such power, much less casually use it. Otherwise, Yiguchen could have made a move right from the start. Thinking of this, Zhenggu turned back. Deacon Zhenggu, Yiguchen and his group have already escaped. I don't know where they went. Zhou Heng also understood the situation, and his face turned cold. Don't worry, they won't be able to get far. I'll inform Elder Ancient Star to come here. Zhenggu's face was cold as he spoke through gritted teeth. If they didn't kill Yiguchen, where would the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion's face go? You want to alert Elder Ancient Star? Zhou Heng's face changed. Elder Ancient Star was a false saint expert. In the Overlord forces, the true saints didn't care about worldly affairs. They focused on cultivating or traveling to different places to find opportunities to reach a higher level. Therefore, most of the people who were in charge of the sect were false saint experts. Zhou Heng didn't expect that Elder Ancient Star would be alerted to kill Yiguchen. What do you know? That girl is most likely the surviving member of the Su family. That ancient golden sword is most likely the human sovereign sword that the Sky God Sword sect has been looking for. Zhenggu said angrily. The destruction of the Su family was a shocking event that shook the entire South Horizon region. As a deacon of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, he naturally heard about it. He didn't recognize it at first, but now he understood. So that's how it is. Zhou Heng thought of the dead Song Yao. I'll inform Gu Xiaoyang. He'll be furious. Zhou Heng sneered in his heart. Although Song Yuyao's death was a pity, she wasn't his woman after all. On the other hand, Gu Xiaoyang would definitely be furious. Thinking of this, Zhou Heng picked up the communication jade slip. On the other side, Dongfang Shuri's face was cold. He decided to inform the leaders of the collateral families to come. Even Xinghong Crown Prince of the Sky Star Dynasty asked, "Is grandfather free? Ask him to come. With grandfather's strength as a false saint, Yiguchen will definitely die." Are we going to alert the retired emperor? Even the 2 honorables of the Sky Star Dynasty were shocked. We have to get rid of Yiguchen. Otherwise, there will be a disaster in the future. No matter how unwilling Xinghong Crown Prince was, he had to admit that he was indeed afraid of Yiguchen's growth. Yiguchen was someone who even dared to confront the overlord forces. Since the Sky Star dynasty had provoked such a powerful enemy, they had to eliminate him completely. Also, I've got 2 immemorial sword tokens. With the changes in the Tianhuang Plain, there might really be an immemorial sword. It'll be safer if grandfather comes, Xinghong Crown Prince said. Today's incident alarmed all forces. Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, Dongfang family's collateral branch, and the Sky Star dynasty all notified their experts. For a moment, everyone felt that the small Saint Origin dynasty would become a place where a storm was brewing. In the next few days, what happened in the Violet Forbidden Mountains spread throughout the entire dynasty at the speed of a plague. It even caused a small commotion in the South Horizon region. After all, someone dared to challenge the authority of an overlord force. Moreover, the person was a genius from a low-level dynasty. This added a touch of legend to the matter. Everyone knew that Yiguchen would suffer the wrath of an overlord force. No one would be able to save him. Along with this news, the deathly aura that erupted from the eternal demon city in the Tianhuang Plain had eroded half of the dynasty. A large area of land had turned into a demonic land. Countless mortals and low-level martial artists were drawn into the deathly aura and were eroded. For a moment, the entire Saint Origin dynasty was boiling and became the eye of the storm. Saint Origin dynasty, imperial capital. The current imperial capital was no longer as prosperous as it had been in the past. After Sidu Hongxue massacred the imperial palace and the Yuan master and the others had died, the entire imperial capital had fallen into chaos and clamor. In front of a tavern in the imperial capital, a loud shout was heard. "You old man, you never pay for your drinks. You only buy on credit. Get out of here." One of the waiters kicked a dirty old man out of the room. "What do you mean by buying on credit? Didn't I use this hammer to pay off my debt?" The old drunkard shouted at the top of his lungs. "Get out of here. Take your broken hammer and get out of here." A hammer was thrown out and hit the old drunkard's head. Ouch! The old drunkard fell to the ground and rubbed his head. Then, he put away the hammer and stood up as if nothing had happened. He patted the dust off his body. His dizzy, drunken eyes glanced in a certain direction. It was the direction of the Forbidden Mountain. That half-disciple of mine really knows how to cause trouble. He even dared to kill people from the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion and the Dongfang family. But don't die. I still need you to help me fulfill my wish. After being silent for so long, I wonder how many people in the South Horizon region are willing to give me, the Southern Forging Saint hand, some face. I can only help you with this little bit of face. The old drunkard? No, he should be called Duan Tianfeng. He shook his head and laughed. Then he staggered away with the remaining half of his gourd of wine. No one in the Saint Origin dynasty knew about this drunken, destitute old man. He was the 8th grade Grandmaster Blacksmith who was once as famous as Xiao Gongshu. The Southern Forging Saint hand, Duan Tianfeng. Chapter 772. In the Saint Origin dynasty, the Beichen mansion was where the Situ family used to be. Looking around, it was a ruin with weeds growing everywhere. There was no sign of anyone. The once prosperous Situ family was now a thing of the past. On the roof of a ruined building, a tall and slender woman in a snow-white dress stood quietly. It was Situ Hongxue. She stood alone. Her back looked so thin and weak that it made one's heart ache. Interesting. You'll never guess what Yiguchen did. Grandma Withered Flower suddenly appeared beside her with a smile on her old face. That kid provoked the Starry Sword Pavilion and the Dongfang family. He even killed a sovereign. I don't know if this news is true or not, but it seems like he's going to die even without you. Is that so? Sidu Hongxue raised her brows. Grandma Withered Flower told Sidu Hongxue everything she knew. After Sidu Hongxue heard this, the corners of her mouth curled up into a cold smile. Yiguchen, you're willing to go against the heavens and kill venerables for that girl called Su Gensher. But why didn't you even say a word of regret to Hongxue back then? You're so ruthless. The 7 despair demon heart in Sidu Hongshue's heart throbbed. A dark, negative, and heartless aura gradually spread out from her body. When Grandma Withered Flower saw this, a smile appeared on her face as she said, "You've been here for so long. Isn't it time to cut off everything?" Whoosh! In the next moment, Sidu Hongshue's figure faded into the void. Saint Origin Dynasty, hundreds of thousands of miles away. A golden dragon boat was traveling through the void. Di Haoyan stood on top of the dragon boat with his hands behind his back. His golden hair fluttered in the wind. His silver eyes looked into the distance as a smile appeared on his face. Interesting. How interesting. Su Jianshi, are you afraid that I won't be able to find you? You actually dared to use the power of the human emperor's sword like that. On Di Haoyan's flawless handsome face, there was a smile that was enough to make all women drunk. Between his eyebrows, a faint golden sword shadow floated up and down, emitting a buzzing sound. Di Haoyan raised his slender fingers and stroked the space between his eyebrows. He muttered to himself, "Emperor's sword, you have been waiting for a long time. Don't worry, I will get the Emperor's sword soon." Also, Di Haoyan stared at the golden sword-shaped emblem on the back of his hand. This was the symbol of the 9th generation sword grandmaster's elite. Interesting. The sequence insignia actually reacted. Could it be that there are sword sect ruins in that tiny little kingdom, or perhaps there are sword sect sequence insignia? But that's fine. If there really are, I'll just kill them. Di Haoyan flicked his sleeves, looking indifferent. As far as he was concerned, killing a 9th generation sword sect echelon was as simple as eating and drinking. South Horizon region, a certain valley. This valley was secluded, cold, and picturesque. There was even a misty mist that enveloped the entire valley like a light mist. Within the valley, there was a waterfall that resembled the Milky Way. Beside the waterfall, a peerless beauty was dancing with a sword. It was a woman in her 20s, dressed in a moon-white robe. Her hair was as black as ink, and her robes were whiter than snow. Her body was like a white lotus, untainted by mud. Her eyes were like limpid autumn waters, clear but not demonic. Her skin was as white as ice and snow. Her beautiful face was as cold as frost under the reflection of the moonlight. There was a mole at the corner of her left eye. This caused the woman's cold and peerless face to become more lively and moving. The white-clothed woman danced with a sword, appearing even more hazy and moving in the mist that spread out from the waterfall. Her slender, snow-white hand held a slender, silver sword. The white-clothed woman raised her sword vertically, and an invisible sword chi spread out, directly splitting the waterfall in half. Clap, clap, clap. A figure clapped his hands as he walked over indifferently from the entrance of the valley. Fairy Tsangyu, dancing with a sword, is something that should only exist in the heavens. It is rare to see such a thing in the mortal world. The figure that walked into the valley wore a Big Dipper robe and a Mizar star crown. His face was handsome, and his eyes were deep and reserved like the stars. His skin seemed to contain the splendor of stars, faintly glowing. There seemed to be strands of terrifying aura coming from his body. It wasn't deliberate, but it was natural. This person was young Master Xing Yun, Gu Xiaoyang. The white-clothed woman was the Misty Sword Pavilion's Grade 8 prodigy, a peerless genius who was famous even in the South Horizon region, Yitsangyu. Seeing Gu Xiaoyang enter, Yitsangyu's face was cold as she said indifferently, "You dare to enter the moon-seizing valley without my permission? Ha! I have offended you. However, we will be a family in the future, so there is no need to be so polite," Gu Xiaoyang said with a smile. One had to admit that his bearing was extraordinary. Ordinary women would be subdued and fall in love with him just by looking at him. However, Yitsangyu was a woman. She frowned and said, "Tsangyu doesn't remember when we were a family." "Ha, fairy Tsangyu, don't you want to comprehend the mysteries of the innate indestructible sword embryo with me? If you and I cultivate together, both of us will be able to obtain the innate indestructible sword embryo. It will be of great help to our cultivation," Gu Xiaoyang said patiently. He knew that Yi Song-yu was as cold as frost. She had never been close to anyone of the opposite sex, let alone have any romantic feelings. She had put all her heart and soul into cultivation and sword principle, so Gu Xiaoyang started from this aspect. He believed that Yi Song-yu would also be unable to resist the temptation of the innate indestructible sword embryo. As expected, Yi Song-yu's beautiful eyes that reflected the cold moonlight flashed. She was indeed not interested in the matters between men and women. The only thing she cared about was cultivation and sword principle. If she obtained the innate indestructible sword embryo, it would be of great help to her strength. However, Yi Song-yu's voice was like a clear spring as she said, "However, the innate indestructible sword embryo isn't your innate remarkable power, right?" Gu Xiaoyang was taken aback. He then shook his head and said with a smile, "There's no need to trace it back to the source. At least for now and in the future, the innate indestructible sword embryo will be mine." But the innate indestructible sword embryo hasn't completely merged with you. There seems to be a trace of resistance. It's still not perfect. A ray of light flashed across Yi Song-yu's beautiful eyes. If he couldn't perfectly mobilize the power of the innate indestructible sword embryo, then the so-called merging of the innate indestructible sword embryo would have a great impact. It won't be long before I completely refine it. In addition, the original owner of the innate indestructible sword embryo has probably died long ago. Therefore, the innate indestructible sword embryo can only belong to me in the end. Gu Xiaoyang smiled proudly. Is that so? Then we'll talk about it after you completely refine the innate indestructible sword embryo, said Yi Song-yu. However, at this moment, Gu Xiaoyang seemed to have sensed something. He took out a jade slip and checked it with his divine soul. Immediately, there was a cracking sound. Gu Xiaoyang clenched his fist tightly. His killing intent leaked out involuntarily as he directly crushed the jade slip. His calm and composed handsome face instantly became as gloomy as water as an extreme chill filled the air. How is this possible? Senior Sister Songs. Gu Xiaoyang's aura was released uncontrollably. It could be seen that his emotions were fluctuating violently. Yi Song-yu's eyes dimmed. Fairy Song-yu, I still have important matters to attend to. I won't stay here any longer. Gu Xiaoyang let out a deep breath and was about to leave. However, Yi Song-yu's beautiful eyes dimmed. She suddenly said, I wonder where you're going. Can Song-yu accompany you? Yi Song-yu naturally said this because she had sensed some clues. Gu Xiaoyang's expression changed slightly. This time, he was going to kill the original owner of the innate indestructible sword embryo, which was Yi Guqin. However, when he thought about how he would kill the original owner, Yi Guqin, in front of Yi Song-yu, it was the best way to express his stance to Yi Song-yu. All right. Since Fairy Song-yu is willing to accompany me, I'm more than happy to do so. However, we have to be faster. Gu Xiaoyang forced a smile. He took out a jade slip and broke through the void with Yi Song-yu. He actually used a great shift talisman. It seems like something has happened. Yi Song-yu's eyes dimmed. At the side, Gu Xiaoyang's face was no longer as calm as before. Instead, it was filled with an extremely cold killing intent. A centipede dies but never falls down. Yi Guqin, I've underestimated an ant like you. However, this time, I'll kill you in front of Yi Song-yu. This way, Yi Song-yu will completely submit to me. Gu Xiaoyang's killing intent surged as he flew towards the Saint Origin dynasty. Chapter 773. In the Saint Origin dynasty, news of the battle at the Forbidden Violet Mountains spread like wildfire. There were also many forces that wanted to enter the Saint Origin dynasty to investigate. Moreover, the imperial family had been destroyed and the eternal demon city had appeared. The entire dynasty was practically in a complete mess. In a desolate mountain range, there was a deep and serene mountain stream. Yi Guqin was with Su Jianshi, Feng Manlu, Little Fatty, Divine Eagle, and Blackie. Yi Guqin had stopped here because he needed to stabilize Su Jianshi's injuries and heal her. He didn't know how many healing pills and precious medicines he had used, but he had also transferred a lot of ancient god blood with rich life essence to Su Jianshi. Su Jianshi was injured because she had used too much of the human sovereign sword's power, causing her to suffer from a lack of blood essence. A few days later, Su Jianshi finally opened her eyes. Although she was still weak, she could at least move. "Don't do this again." Yi Guchen frowned. "You're the vice leader of the Righteous Alliance. Of course, I have to protect you." Although her face was pale and her body was weak, Su Jianshi still smiled. However, she looked weak and pitiful. "Sigh." Yi Guchen sighed. "What do you plan to do next?" Feng Manlu asked from the side. Yi Guchen's eyes flickered. "I'm going to the Eternal Demon City." There were two reasons why Yi Guchen wanted to go to the Eternal Demon City. First, there might be traces of a famed primordial sword in the Eternal Demon City. Even now, Yi Guchen couldn't forget the scene he saw in the heaven-devouring beast's beast core. The famed primordial sword was forged by the Taotai, one of the 4 primordial beasts. It had the power to devour heaven and earth. Although Yi Guchen couldn't be sure that there was a connection between the two, there was a possibility. Yi Guchen was determined to forge his own famed sword. However, if there was a chance that he could obtain another famed primordial sword, Yi Guchen wouldn't reject it. Of course, if the primordial famed sword really appeared, then with Yi Guchen's current foundation, he probably wouldn't be able to compete with those true experts. Their only hope was the primordial sword token. As for the second reason, Yi Guchen knew that the immemorial sword token seemed to be related to the Eternal Demon City. As long as he had the immemorial sword token, the devil corpse puppets around the Eternal Demon City would not attack him. Yi Guchen was now in an extremely dangerous situation. Although he had Xiao He as his trump card, there was no guarantee that nothing would happen. With the primordial sword token, Yi Guchen would be much safer in the Eternal Devil City. Hence, Yi Guchen decided to head to the Eternal Devil City. Brother Yi, that sword gleam of yours?" Little Fatty suddenly spoke from the side in a daze. "What's wrong?" Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows slightly. "That voice sounded a little familiar," Little Fatty said in a daze. "A little familiar? How is that possible?" Yi Guchen revealed a look of surprise. That was the voice of the 8th generation sword master, Tian Xing. How could Little Fatty have heard it before? Why does it sound so familiar? Little Fatty scratched his head with a confused look on his face. He probably didn't know why either. Yi Guchen's eyes were deep as he glanced at Little Fatty. Little Fatty's origin was indeed mysterious. There was also some kind of seal in his body. His master is called Xing Tian Yi Tian Xing. Could it be? Yi Guchen's eyes flickered as he thought of a possibility. However, this was too inconceivable. It was hard to believe. If Little Fatty's master was really Tian Xing, then why was he in the Saint Origin dynasty? What was the destiny that he was waiting for? Yi Guchen's mind was in a mess. He couldn't figure it out at the moment. "By the way, I'll teach you my movement skill," Little Fatty suddenly said. Yi Guchen's eyes lit up slightly. Since the first time he saw Little Fatty, he was very interested in his movement skill. However, Little Fatty refused to teach him his movement skill at that time. Right now, he was very familiar with Little Fatty. Furthermore, at this critical juncture, Little Fatty was also willing to contribute his movement technique to Lin Fan. This movement skill is called So Near, Yet Worlds Apart. It was born from one of the 10 ancient secret skills, Divine Movement Secret Skill, Little Fatty said. 10 ancient secret skills? Yi Guchen was puzzled. He also knew some secret skills, such as the secret skill of spirit devouring, secret skill of soul tempering, secret skill of wave illusion, and so on. However, these secret skills weren't very useful to Yi Guchen at the moment. Especially the secret skill of spirit devouring. It was very helpful to Yi Guchen at the beginning. However, it seemed to be of little use at the moment. Even if he used it, it wouldn't increase his strength by much. The 10 ancient secret skills are 10 heaven-defying secret skills that have been passed down from the primordial era. Every one of them has incredible power and strength. It's the pinnacle of a certain field. However, it's a pity that almost no one has inherited it until now. Feng Manlu knew a little about it and said calmly. "I see." Yi Guchen pondered for a while and suddenly thought of something. He then asked, among the 10 ancient secret skills, is there a secret skill of heaven devouring? There is indeed such a skill, Feng Manlu nodded and said. Is that so? Yi Guchen's eyes lit up. He naturally didn't ask this question without thinking, because in the memory of the monster core of the heaven-devouring beast, there was a sentence that said, forge a famous primordial sword and pass down the secret skill of heaven-devouring. Could the secret skill of spirit-devouring be born from the secret skill of heaven-devouring? Yi Guchen thought to himself. Many of the inheritances of the 10 great ancient secret techniques had been severed or scattered. For example, little fatties so close, yet worlds apart was a small part of the primordial divine movement secret skill. However, even if it was only a small part, the speed it displayed was enough to surprise Yi Guchen. Little fatty then taught so close, yet worlds apart to Yi Guchen, Su Jianshi, and Feng Manlu. What was even more surprising was that the divine condor and Blackie actually began to imitate him. Yi Guchen distributed some leaves and branches from the Tree of Enlightenment so that Su Jianshi and the others could comprehend it faster. A few days later, Yi Guchen and the others could barely use so close, yet worlds apart. Of course, their speed couldn't be compared to little fatties. However, it was much faster than before. Let's go to the Eternal Demon City, Yi Guchen said. Then, the 4 of them and the 2 beasts flew in the direction of the endless plains. However, before they got too close to the endless plains, Yi Guchen and the others stopped in their tracks. As far as the eye could see, endless pitch-black death chi was rolling in from the horizon. Wherever it passed, not a single living thing could survive. Has the death chi spread here? It's shrouded half of the dynasty. Yi Guchen's eyes were filled with astonishment. What kind of existence was in the Eternal Demon City? Just the death chi that leaked out was enough to destroy a dynasty. I can feel it. From the depths of the death chi, the Eternal Demon City is suppressing us greatly. Given my strength, if I enter the range of the death chi, I'll be suppressed to a very low level. Feng Manlu frowned slightly. The suppressive force from the Eternal Demon City would be stronger when facing a strong opponent. The stronger one was, the stronger the suppressive force. Master, you can hide in the periphery and coordinate with us. You can also inform us if the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion and the other forces are here, Yi Guchen said. Then your safety. Feng Manlu frowned. It's fine. I have a way to prevent us from being harmed by the demonic corpse puppets, Yi Guchen said. With the immemorial sword token, he could avoid many dangers. All right. Feng Manlu nodded slightly and disappeared. Let's go. Yi Guchen waved his hand and said, he was finally going to uncover the secrets of the Eternal Demon City and the immemorial sword token. Chapter 774. Just as Yi Guchen, Su Jianshi, and the others entered the Death Chi's range, at the other edges of the Death Chi, there were tens of thousands of cultivators surrounding the Death Chi. They could also feel the oppressive aura coming from the Eternal Devil City. The higher the cultivation base of an expert, the more they could feel it. At a place at the edge of the death aura, a large group of people stood there. A large number of people had gathered around and were looking at the group of people in the middle. They were from the Starry Sword Pavilion and the Starry Sky Dynasty. Zhenggu was also among them. He felt like vomiting blood when he sensed the gazes directed at him. Ever since he was scared away by Yi Guchen in the Forbidden Violet Mountain, he had become a laughingstock. Zhenggu had become a laughingstock. A dignified venerable from the Heavenly Palace was scared away by a junior in the life and death realm. It would be a stain on Zhenggu's life that he would never be able to erase. Although the surrounding cultivators did not dare to mock Zhenggu openly, their mocking gazes made Zhenggu's face turn gloomy. Zhou Heng saw Zhenggu's expression and said, Deacon Zhenggu, please don't take it to heart. As long as Yi Guchen dies, everything will be over. However, are you sure he entered the Death Chi? I have a special tracking technique. Although they tried their best to hide their tracks, they still left some traces. However, the pressure coming from the Eternal Demon City is too strong. The stronger the cultivator, the greater the suppression. Hence, it's not easy for me to enter, Zhenggu said. At this time, Xinghong crown prince from the Starry Sky dynasty stepped forward and took out 2 immemorial sword tokens. Young Master Zhou Heng, Deacon Zhenggu, these are the immemorial sword tokens I found in the Saint Origin dynasty. They might be related to the Eternal Demon City. The Starry Sky dynasty was a vassal of the Starry Sword Pavilion. It was the Starry Sky dynasty who told the Starry Sword Pavilion that there was a famed sword in the Saint Origin dynasty. Could this be the token to enter the Eternal Demon City? Zhou Heng took one of the tokens and his eyes lit up. If Zhou Heng found a famed sword in the Eternal Demon City, he would definitely be rewarded. Zhou Heng could not imagine how the sect would reward him. Most likely, even the pavilion master would welcome him personally. After all, in the entire Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, there was only one primordial famed sword, the 7 Stars Long Yuan. If I can help the sect get a primordial famed sword, I will definitely be able to turn the tables around. Even Gu Xiaoyang's status will be lower than mine. Zhou Heng's eyes were burning with passion. He had never thought of taking the primordial famed sword for himself, because that was impossible. Even if an ancient famed sword appeared in the end, it would be a game between the big shots. It would have nothing to do with him as a disciple. Initially, Zhou Heng had been fearful of the Eternal Devil City. However, now that he had the primordial sword token, coupled with the temptation of benefits, Zhou Heng was no longer afraid. He hurriedly said, "Deacon Zhenggu, since it's inconvenient for you to enter, let me and Crown Prince Xinghong go in first to explore." The reason why Zhou Heng was so anxious was because he had already informed Gu Xiaoyang. If he delayed any longer and waited for Gu Xiaoyang to arrive, he would lose all his credit. Well, that's good. Elder Xinggu and the others are also coming here. You just need to find out the situation inside, Zhenggu said. Just as well. Grandfather is also coming here. At that time, there will be a total of 2 false saints, including Elder Xinggu. I believe that if a famed sword appears, it will belong to the Starry Sword Pavilion, Crown Prince Xinghong said. Yes, indeed. If our sect can really get a primordial famed sword this time, the Starry Sword Pavilion will have a lot of credit. Even Elder Xing Mo will be able to return to the Starry Sword Pavilion, Zhenggu said. Elder Xing Mo was the founder of the Starry Sword Pavilion, who was expelled from the Starry Sword Pavilion because of his mistakes. Yes. Crown Prince Xinghong was excited. If Elder Xing Mo returned to the Starry Sword Pavilion, as his grandson, Crown Prince Xinghong would naturally return to the Starry Sword Pavilion and receive the best treatment and training. Heh, Yiguchen, so what if you have defeated me? You will be killed by the Starry Sword Pavilion, and I will join the Starry Sword Pavilion and soar into the 9 heavens. Crown Prince Xinghong's eyes revealed a bone-chilling coldness. Without much hesitation, Zhou Heng and Crown Prince Xinghong entered together. On the other side, Dongfang Shuri and Dongfang Ziyun of the Dongfang family were also there. However, they did not have any sovereigns with them. The 2 sovereigns and Li Sun had been killed by Yiguchen. There must be a big secret in the ancient demon city. It is a pity that it is too dangerous. However, I have already informed the clan leader of my family. He will be here soon, Dongfang Shuri murmured. On the other side of the ancient demon city, 2 figures suddenly appeared in the void. They were Situ Hongxue and Grandma Withered Flower. Grandma Withered Flower said, Yiguchen has entered the death chi. I am afraid that he is trying to prolong his life. However, there is news that a false saint from the Starry Sword Pavilion will arrive. This is just delaying his death. Situ Hongxue looked indifferent. She slowly raised her hand, and the primordial sword token was trembling slightly. I am going in. Situ Hongshue's voice was cold as she entered in a flash. Generally speaking, divine dwelling experts were already suppressed by the ancient demon city, and not many were willing to take the risk to enter. However, Situ Hongxue was determined to enter. In addition, various high-ranking and top empires had also arrived. Princess Feng Shi, Zidonglai, Gong Mingba and the others also stayed outside the death chi, not daring to enter. Kenpo was also there. He glanced at Zidonglai and said, Zidonglai, are you going to renege on the bet? Zidonglai's face turned a little unnatural, but he still said firmly, Ha, you must be joking. I have always been a person of integrity. Unfortunately, the champion is not Yiguchen. Whether it is or not, you know in your heart. You only need to know that there will be retribution if you break your promise, Kenpo said coldly. Then I will wait here for my retribution. Zi Donglai smiled indifferently, not minding at all. On the other side, the major forces of the Saint Origin Empire had also arrived at the Death Chi. This was because the news that Yiguchen had entered the Death Chi had unknowingly spread. Everyone knew that Yiguchen, who had killed the sovereigns of the Starry Sword Pavilion and the Dongfang family, was in the Death Chi. Among them was the Sword Sex Tower. Yan Chang'e, Yan Bailin, Yan Xiaotang, Yan Feiling, Yan Wushuang, Ji Ling and the others from the inner courtyard, and Shui were also with them. Brother Yi, Sister Su. Shui was on the verge of tears, her big eyes glistening with tears. If Yan Wushuang and the others hadn't stopped her, Shui would have walked into the Death Chi. Sigh. Yan Chang'e sighed deeply, feeling helpless in his heart. Let alone the Sword Sex Tower, even the Swallow Cloud Empire was like an ant in front of the Starry Sword Pavilion and the Dongfang family. Is there really no way to save Yiguchen? Yan Wushuang bit her lips, her face pale. Cousin, give up. Yiguchen has offended an overlord-level force in the entire Nantian region. Yan Xiaotang didn't ridicule her further because he knew that it would make Yan Wushuang feel disgusted. I don't believe that Yiguchen will be able to create another miracle. Yan Wushuang clenched her jade-like hands. You'll know when the truth is right in front of you. Yan Xiaotang muttered to himself and shook his head. No one could save Yiguchen now. While everyone was gathering around the ancient demon city to witness Yiguchen's final outcome, a huge commotion broke out. Yiguchen himself had already entered deep into the deathly aura. All of them had true energy surging out of their bodies to isolate themselves from the Death Chi. Su Jianshi, this is for you. Yiguchen had 2 immemorial sword tokens, so he gave one to Su Jianshi. What's this? Although Su Jianshi was still weak, she had recovered a little. As long as she didn't overuse the power of the human ruler's sword, she would be fine. This is what we rely on to survive. Yiguchen said in a deep voice. Chapter 775. Yiguchen knew that almost everyone in the outside world thought that he was the prey of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion and the Dongfang family. They could kill him however they wanted. But Yiguchen wasn't someone who would let others kill him. If Yiguchen wanted to escape from the Overlord-level forces, there were only 2 opportunities. One was Blackie. The other was the ancient demonic city. Yiguchen believed that the existence of the ancient demonic city would complicate the situation. If a primordial sword really appeared, the situation would be even more chaotic. Only in this chaos would Yiguchen have a chance to escape. This token can save our lives? Su Jianshi tilted her head curiously. Let's go deeper. Yiguchen took a step forward with Su Jianshi and the others. They continued to advance through the Death Chi. The deathly chi was extremely corrosive. Even true chi would be quickly consumed. Fortunately, Yiguchen and Su Jianshi weren't ordinary people. Yiguchen's true chi was not only vigorous, but he also had the mysterious Tribulation Lightning Sword in his dantian. He wasn't afraid of the deathly chi's corrosion. Su Jianshi also had the human sovereign sword to protect her. The divine condor's body was covered in flames, which had a restraining effect on the deathly chi. As for Blackie, it allowed the deathly chi to erode it. However, it was completely fine and was still jumping around. Yiguchen knew that it was because Blackie had the chaotic world demonic ape's inextinguishable demonic body. The deathly chi couldn't do anything to Blackie. The most surprising thing was that little fatty wasn't on guard at all. However, the deathly chi couldn't erode him at all. Little fatty is mysterious, Yiguchen thought to himself. But now wasn't the time to think about that. However, it didn't take long before a terrifying hissing sound came from the churning deathly chi. Some thin and withered figures emerged from the black death chi. They screamed and rushed towards Yiguchen and the others. It was the demonic corpse puppet that had been corroded by the death aura. Yiguchen immediately took out the immemorial sword token. At this moment, The immemorial sword token was trembling violently like never before, as if it was resonating with something. Su Jianshir's immemorial sword token was the same. The demonic corpse puppets that were about to charge over immediately stopped in their tracks, their dead gray eyes turning numbly as they retreated. It's actually effective? Su Jianshir's eyes widened. Let's go deeper. Yi Guqin was not surprised. After all, the immemorial sword token had saved his life when he was forced to the bottom of the demon abyss by Dongfang Hong and Dongfang Ziyun. Besides this, Zhou Heng, Xinghong Crown Prince and Sidu Hongxue, who possessed the immemorial sword token, were also not attacked by the devil corpse puppets. Zhou Heng and Xinghong Crown Prince's faces were filled with joy. They knew that they had made the right bet. The primordial sword token might really be related to the eternal devil city. Finally, after a few days, they crossed the area eroded by the death aura. The eternal devil city, which was suspended in the endless black death aura, finally appeared in front of Yi Guqin's eyes. The eternal demon city was simply too huge. It was so huge that it seemed to fill up every single corner of the sky. Countless golden runes rose from the surface of the pitch-black eternal devil city as if they were some kind of seal. Billowing pitch-black death chi was constantly gushing out from the cracks and corners of the eternal devil city. Although Yi Guqin had seen the eternal devil city before, he had not been able to clearly feel its majesty when he was in the bottomless demon abyss. Now, he had the most vivid experience. Everyone could feel that the eternal devil city was imprisoning a peerless, ferocious beast. Who left this eternal devil city behind? Does the immemorial sword really exist here? Yi Guqin took a deep breath. In front of the majestic eternal devil city, Yi Guqin's figure was as small as an ant. It was also because of this that Yi Guqin and the others could only see one side of the eternal devil city. They were in the east. Xinghong Crown Prince and Zhou Heng were in the south. Situ Hongxue landed in the north. Although they happened to be facing the same direction, when they approached the eternal devil city at the same time, the immemorial sword tokens in their hands began to tremble involuntarily. The 5 immemorial sword tokens trembled at the same time. Then, 5 incomparably bright rays of light rose and entered the eternal devil city. A moment later, the golden runes that rose outside the eternal devil city suddenly turned into golden light rain and dissipated into the void. The entire majestic eternal devil city rumbled and trembled as if a mechanism had been triggered. An incomparably majestic pressure swept out in all directions. Yi Guqin and the others were pushed back dozens of feet by the pressure. As for the divine dwelling realm experts and the heavenly palace sovereigns, they felt an extreme pressure. Could the eternal devil city be opened? Outside the area shrouded by the aura of death, millions of people gathered in all directions. At this moment, all of them were shocked. The doors on all sides of the eternal devil city were opened, and they were as dark as the mouth of a giant abyss beast. The eternal devil city is open. Yi Guqin's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't know whether it was good or bad. Let's go in. But no matter what, Yi Guqin had already come this far. There was no way he would back down. He led Su Jianshir and the others directly into the eternal devil city. In other directions, Zhou Heng, Xinghong Crown Prince, and Sidu Hongxue also entered at the same time. As soon as he entered, Yi Guqin felt a chill down his spine. There was also a barbaric, ancient, and magnificent aura. The aura of death that could erode everything also became thicker. What is this place? Su Jianshir also looked around curiously. Countless forked secret passages suddenly appeared in front of them. It was like the entrance of a beehive. It was impossible to distinguish the path. Just as Yi Guqin was hesitating, little Fatty suddenly pointed at one of the paths and said, "Try this path." Yi Guqin and Su Jianshir glanced at little Fatty from the corner of their eyes. Little Fatty scratched his head embarrassedly and said with a smile, "It's nothing. It's just my intuition. Let's go." Yi Guqin's eyes were deep. They followed little Fatty's direction. Not long after, they passed through the secret passage safely. However, what Yi Guqin and the others saw in front of them shocked them. Flesh and blood swelled endlessly, wriggling as if it was breathing. The interior of the Eternal Devil City was like a visceral space. A huge devil fetus of flesh and blood occupied the entire space. Even the ground Yiguchin and the others stepped on was soft flesh and blood. Well, what is this? Su Jianshir's face paled, and she felt nauseous. Anyone wouldn't be able to withstand such an environment, let alone a woman. What dense flesh and blood essence? Could this devil fetus of flesh and blood be condensed from the blood essence of all the beings devoured by the bottomless devil abyss over the years? Yiguchin's eyes trembled. He bent down and grabbed a lump of flesh and blood. It contained a rich blood qi, as well as pure demonic qi. Look, that's... Little Fatty swept his gaze around and suddenly noticed something, causing him to make a sound. Chapter 776. Yiguchin looked in the direction that Little Fatty was pointing at, and his eyes narrowed. In the middle of the devil fetus, there was a devil egg made of flesh and blood. The devil egg was still wriggling. There were a total of 360 golden chains wrapped around the demonic egg. At first glance, it looked like a worm egg stuck on a golden spider web. The devil egg was wriggling nonstop, and its surface was shrouded in a dense black deathly aura. The deathly aura contained a terrifying devouring power. What on earth is this thing? Yiguchen's eyes were filled with shock. Everything that was happening within the Eternal Demon City was way too unbelievable. He thought there might be a primordial famed sword or some other opportunities. However, there was no such thing. There was only the endless flesh and blood devil embryos in front of him, as well as the strange devil egg that was bound by 360 golden chains. This. Little Fatty looked at the devil egg in a daze. Yiguchin looked down and saw a stone platform under the devil egg that was wrapped in chains. There were 5 grooves on the stone platform. The shape was the same as the primordial sword token in Yiguchin's hand. There are a total of 5 primordial sword tokens. Yiguchin muttered to himself. At this moment, a sound came from the other side of the secret passage. 2 figures flashed in. They were Zhou Heng and Xinghong Crown Prince. The 2 of them saw Yiguchin and the others at the same time. Their eyes were filled with extreme fear and ferociousness. "You're here too?" Zhou Heng and Xinghong Crown Prince did not attack Yiguchin immediately. This was because both of them had been defeated by Yiguchin. Not to mention, Yiguchin had Su Jianshir, who had strange means and could injure venerables. "You have primordial sword tokens too." Yiguchin squinted his eyes and saw the primordial sword tokens in their hands. "Yiguchin, although you and I have a grudge, the most important thing now is to unravel the secret of the Demon City. If you attack us, we won't let you off easily." Zhou Heng said coldly as he looked at Yiguchin with fear. Yiguchin's eyes dimmed, and he did not say anything. However, at this moment, a beautiful figure in a snow-white dress appeared from the other side of the secret passage. She was tall and slender, and her snow-white dress made her look graceful. Her black hair was crystal clear, and her face was as beautiful as jade. However, the obsidian-like jade-like eyes that were embedded in her immortal face always carried an indifferent intent. But when that pair of indifferent beautiful eyes met Yiguchin's eyes, Yiguchin was stunned. Everything shattered. It was as if a stone had been tossed into a calm pool, causing ripples to form on the surface. Yiguchin took a deep breath and exhaled as he looked at the beautiful woman who rushed in. There was a complicated expression on his face that had never been seen before. Situ Hongxue. The woman in snow-white dress was Situ Hongxue. Yiguchin. Situ Hongxue didn't know what she was feeling. Complicated, painful, sorrowful, desolate, and a mixture of love and hate. It was as if a knife had been stabbed into her heart and was being stirred up. However, in the end, this complex emotion was transformed into an incomparably cold indifference by the cold beating of the 7 extinction demon heart. "I've already given up on that name. Now I'm called Hongchen Shui." Situ Hongshue's voice became incomparably cold, without the slightest emotion. Yiguchin was silent, not knowing what to say. At the side, Su Jianshir sensed something. That woman had complicated feelings for Yiguchin, and there was even a trace of killing intent. Silly boy, she's. Su Jianshi was on guard as she stood in front of Yi Guchen. Situ Hongxue felt like a knife was being twisted in her heart. You can give up your life for that girl, and she can give up her life for you. As for me, what am I? What about the past? An incomparably dark and negative emotion erupted from the seven despair demon heart, almost completely devouring Situ Hongshue's mind. Right at this moment, the 5 sword tokens started to tremble violently. Yi Guchen's emotions were temporarily freed from the complicated emotions. After all, they were currently in the mysterious eternal demon city. The demonic egg is moving! Little Fatty suddenly shouted. The demonic egg wrapped in golden chains started beating like a heart. Then, an incomparably strong aura of death and devouring surged out from it. Finally, under the stunned gazes of Yi Guchen and the others, it turned into a black-robed figure. It was a skinny old man shrouded in a black robe. He was as shriveled as a walnut, and his face was wrinkled. Only his eyes had no whites. They were completely black, like 2 black holes. It was incomparably terrifying, as if one's soul would be devoured at a glance. Yi Guchen, Zhou Heng, and even Situ Hongxue suddenly took a few steps back. They sensed a soul-crushing danger from the black-eyed old man. Ah, don't be afraid. Since you're here, you're fated. The black-eyed old man chuckled. However, he didn't look kind or amiable at all. Instead, it was even more eerie and made one's scalp tingle. May I know who you are? Zhou Heng mustered up his courage and asked. He was, after all, a sky pride of the Starry Sword Pavilion. He was quite knowledgeable and knew that this old man probably had an extraordinary background. Who am I? I'm the sword spirit of a primordial sword, the black-eyed old man said casually. However, Yi Guchen and the others felt as if they were about to stop breathing when they heard what he said. The sword spirit of a primordial sword. As for Zhou Heng and Xinghong Crown Prince, they were stunned. Then, ecstasy surged in their eyes. There really was a primordial sword in the eternal demon city. Senior, you're the sword spirit of a primordial sword. Zhou Heng and Xinghong Crown Prince bowed hurriedly. A primordial sword was nurtured for eternity. It was possible for it to give birth to a sword spirit. Some primordial swords would choose their owners automatically. For example, the human sovereign sword had chosen Su Jianshi. However, such a situation was too rare. The sword spirit of a primordial sword. If that's the case, then the primordial sword is, Yi Guchen pondered in his heart. Then he turned to look at the sealed demonic egg. However, if it was a primordial sword, why would it be sealed for no reason? Who was the person who sealed the primordial sword? Yi Guchen had many questions in his heart. However, he did not act rashly. As for Zhou Heng and Xinghong Crown Prince, they were overjoyed. They had actually found the primordial sword. Senior Sword Spirit, may I ask if the ancient famed sword is inside this demonic flesh egg? Zhou Heng looked at the demonic flesh egg with a burning gaze. That's right. The black-eyed old man smiled slyly. Then how can I get it? Zhou Heng's voice trembled. It was a primordial sword. Even if it was ranked last on the Earth leaderboard, it was still extremely powerful and could be considered an ultimate weapon. Even if Zhou Heng could not use such a divine weapon, he could give it to the Starry Sword Pavilion. Who knew how many rewards and resources he would receive? At the same time, Xinghong Crown Prince was also excited. If he could obtain the primordial sword, he would be considered to have made a contribution. The entire Skystar dynasty would change because of him. It's very simple to obtain it. The primordial sword will belong to the fated one. As long as you place the primordial sword token in your hands on the stone platform, the primordial sword will be released, the black-eyed old man said patiently. Chapter 777. Is it that simple? Zhou Heng and Xinghong Crown Prince looked at each other and saw the excitement in each other's eyes. Primordial swords were rare in this world. To obtain one would have to spend a lot of time and effort, go through countless dangerous places, and compete with countless experts. However, they did not need to do anything, nor did they need to take any risks. They just needed to place the primordial sword token on the stone platform to unlock the primordial swords. It was too easy. It was like a dream. Let's go. The two of them did not hesitate as they wanted to obtain the primordial swords. Wait! A voice rang out. Zhou Hang and Xinghong Crown Prince turned around and saw Yi Guchen frowning. Yi Guchen, what do you mean? Zhou Hang asked coldly. Really? Is it that simple? Yi Guchen said faintly. Although the black-eyed old man was the sword spirit of the primordial swords, it was only his words. After all, the flesh devil fetus, the sealed devil egg, and everything else in the eternal devil city gave off an eerie feeling. Well, Junior, don't you want to obtain the primordial swords? The black-eyed old man looked at Yi Guchen with his black eyes. In an instant, Yi Guchen felt as though he had fallen into a bottomless abyss with no end. It was as though his divine consciousness was about to be swallowed by the black hole. However, Yi Guchen's divine soul was extremely strong. After all, he had survived the soul calamity in his sea of consciousness. In his mind, his sea of consciousness spun slightly, and he escaped from the nightmare. The black-eyed old man looked at Yi Guchen deeply. It's up to you whether to believe it or not. However, I'm certain that the one who unlocks the primordial swords will be favored by the primordial swords. The black-eyed old man did not say anything else. Zhou Hang and the Xinghong Crown Prince no longer hesitated after speaking until this point. Their feet moved and they directly landed on the stone stage. As for Situ Hongxue, she remained where she was. No one knew what she was thinking. Almost there. Zhou Hang and Xinghong Crown Prince pressed the immemorial sword token into the groove on the stone platform. Suddenly, the entire stone platform released an endless amount of light. More than 100 of the 360 chains that bound the devil egg suddenly broke. An even thicker aura of death erupted from the devil egg. The entire devil egg began to wriggle and tremble as if it was wrapped around a fetus. I'm finally about to succeed. At this moment, the black-eyed old man suddenly revealed a sly smile. Senior Sword Spirit? Both Zhou Hang and Xinghong Crown Prince felt that something was amiss. Finally, I can mobilize some forces. Hand over your sword tokens as well. The black-eyed old man casually stretched out his hand, and devouring devil qi surged out, surging toward Situ Hongxue and Yi Guchen. It was an irresistible force. Not good retreat. Yi Guchen's expression changed and he quickly retreated. But the surging devil qi was already rushing towards them. Let alone Yi Guchen and the others, even a sovereign wouldn't be able to withstand such a powerful force. Boom! Just as the devil qi was about to engulf Yi Guchen and the others, golden light surged from Zhou Heng's heart. Golden light burst out from Su Jianshir's heart. Countless golden runes turned into an article of light that blocked Su Jianshir, Yi Guchen, and the others. The Emperor's sword automatically protected its owner. This is... The black-eyed old man was also surprised. Unfortunately, Yi Guchen and Su Jianshir also suffered a huge backlash. Their bodies were blasted back, and they spat out blood. The sword token in their hands was also knocked away. On the other side, Situ Hongxue also sensed the danger. The 7 extinction demon heart in her body throbbed loudly, forming a pitch-black light screen that forcibly refined the devouring devil qi. Of course, although Situ Hongxue was at the divine dwelling stage, she couldn't withstand such a powerful impact. She spat out vermilion blood from her mouth, and the sword token in her hand flew out. The 3 sword tokens were retrieved by the devil qi and fell into the other 3 grooves on the stone platform. For a moment, all sound seemed to disappear. Every single one of the golden chains that bound the devil egg began to break inch by inch. In the end, fragments of the chains filled the sky. An indescribable and terrifying wave of energy erupted from the devil egg. Let's leave the ancient devil city. Yi Guchen's heart tightened like never before. He quickly retreated with Su Jianshir and the others. At the same time, he turned to Situ Hongxue and said, Situ Hongxue, leave the ancient devil city. Situ Hongxue didn't look at Yi Guchen, but her figure also rushed out of the ancient devil city. You can leave. The primordial sword is ours. Zhou Hang and Xinghong Crown Prince were extremely excited. They had taken the initiative to hand over the primordial sword token, so they should be favored by the sword spirit and obtain the primordial sword. Senior sword spirit, is the primordial sword about to be born? Zhou Heng and Xinghong Crown Prince asked nervously. The black-eyed old man's smile became even more eerie. That's right. The primordial sword is about to be born. After being imprisoned for countless years, I'll be born again. Say, Senior. The excited smiles on Zhou Heng and Xinghong Crown Prince's faces froze in an instant. Based on his tone, the black-eyed old man didn't seem to be the primordial sword spirit. Their expressions changed from excitement to shock and then to pale. Their eyes were trembling. I'll let your flesh and blood become my blood flower cannon when I'm born. The ancient devil, the heaven-defying master. Haha. The black-eyed old man looked up and laughed arrogantly. Two explosions rang in the air. Zhou Heng and Xinghong Crown Prince didn't even have time to react before their bodies exploded into two blossoms of flesh and blood. A prodigy of the Starry Sword Pavilion and a crown prince of the Starry Sky Dynasty died in an instant. After accumulating for a long time and relying on the devouring power of the Devil Sword, I've finally successfully condensed the flesh and blood devil fetus. I'll use the flesh and blood devil fetus to rebuild my body. Ren Pingxing, do you think my primordial spirit will be annihilated just because you destroyed my body? Imprisoning and suppressing me along with the Devil Sword is your biggest mistake. The black-eyed old man's figure entered the devil fetus. In an instant, the entire ancient devil city trembled. The flesh and blood devil fetus was also squirming. From the outside, the black death chi that spread across the vast land began to shrink like rivers returning to the sea. The center of the shrinking was the ancient devil city. The black death chi covered the vast land and devoured the flesh and blood of countless living beings. It wasn't hard to imagine how much flesh and blood energy would be gathered. For a time, the flesh and blood devil fetus in the ancient devil city split and grew rapidly. The flesh and blood essence was also being absorbed by the devil fetus. Meanwhile, Yiguchen and the others had finally escaped from the eternal demon city. The moment they rushed out of the ancient devil city, the entire ancient devil city absorbed all the death chi in the surroundings. Then, with a loud explosion, the entire ancient devil city shattered. The flesh and blood devil fetus that shocked everyone floated in the void. It was like a small continent, shocking everyone. Chapter 778. The death chi has retreated. Oh my God! What did I just see? Is that the eternal demon city? What's inside it? Oh no! The demon city is going to explode. The entire Saint Origin dynasty was in a state of turmoil. More than 1 million martial artists were surrounding the death chi. However, after the death chi was devoured by the flesh demon fetus, the martial artists were able to see the situation clearly. However, what they saw before their eyes caused everyone to be dumbstruck and incomparably shocked. The majestic eternal demon city exploded into countless pieces. A devil fetus of flesh and blood floated in the void like a small continent, wriggling incessantly. In the middle of the flesh demon fetus, the demon fetus was beating like a heart. Every time it beat, waves of devouring demon chi would be emitted, causing the void to tremble and the space to crack. Let's go and take a closer look. Zheng Gu of the Starry Sword Pavilion and the two honorables of the Skystar dynasty stepped into the void and flew toward the flesh demon fetus. Of course, they did not dare to get too close as they sensed some kind of danger. In addition, Dongfang Shuri and Dongfang Xiun of the Dongfang family and the top dynasties such as Kenpo, Princess Feng Shi, Zidonglai, and Gongmingba were also heading toward the flesh demon fetus. Under Yen Changa's lead, the people of the Sword Sex Pagoda Forest slowly approached the flesh demon fetus. At this moment, more than 1 million people had gathered around the demon fetus of flesh and blood that blotted out the sky. Other than the martial artists who had died or escaped from the Saint Origin dynasty, most of the remaining martial artists were gathered here. The reason for that was because they knew that they would be witnessing a major event today. They might even see the real big shots of the Overlord forces. Why can't I sense Zhou Heng's aura? Zheng Gu's face was filled with shock and disbelief. The two honorables of the Sky Star dynasty looked at each other and their faces turned pale. They had tried to send a message to the Xinghong Crown Prince through the communication jade slip, but there was no response. There was no doubt about what this meant. Zheng Gu's face turned green as if he had just swallowed a fly. There was an 80 to 90% chance that Zhou Heng had died. Out of the 4 of them from the Starry Sword Pavilion, he was the only one who survived. 1 deacon had died, and 2 of the 7 great bears had died. Zheng Gu could almost foresee what kind of harsh punishment he would have to endure when he returned to the sect. It was even possible that he would be beaten half to death and driven out directly. After all, an overlord-level force like the Starry Sword Pavilion did not lack venerable powerhouses. What about that little bastard? Where is he? If I want to atone for my sins, there is only one way. That is to kill that little bastard and see if there really is an ancient famed sword. Zheng Gu's face was gloomy. Although he had already notified Elder Ancient Star and the others, it would probably take some time for them to arrive. While Zheng Gu and the others were pondering, there were also some divine dwelling experts who couldn't help but approach the fleshly devil embryo. They could also see that there was a devil egg at the center of the devil fetus, which was beating like a heart. Every time it beat, it seemed to shake the heavens, and endless spatial ripples burst forth. There must be treasures inside. Some experts who didn't know anything about the Eternal Devil City didn't know the relationship between the Eternal Devil City and the famed ancient swords. Therefore, they were tempted by the devil egg, which contained surging blood energy. Immediately, some divine dwelling experts made their move. Although there weren't many venerable powerhouses, there were divine dwelling experts in every empire. Therefore, some divine dwelling experts began to rush toward the fleshly devil fetus in an attempt to seize the devil egg. But at that moment, the devil egg suddenly shot out streams of devouring demonic chi. In front of the devouring demonic chi, the divine dwelling experts were no different from ordinary people. Their bodies were directly struck, and their bodies were devoured, turning into pure flesh and blood energy that flowed into the fleshly devil fetus. Don't approach it. This scene made many divine dwelling experts' hair stand on end. Even venerables like Zheng Gu felt goosebumps all over his body. Let's wait for Elder Ancient Star to come. That fleshly devil fetus is too strange. Zheng Gu's heart still palpitated with fear. Even venerables weren't qualified to test that devil egg. As everyone distanced themselves from the fleshly devil fetus, the fleshly devil fetus also quieted down. The flesh and blood devil fetus also quieted down. Only the devil egg in the middle was still beating, as if it was about to brew something. At that moment, several figures rushed out from the bottom of the fleshly devil fetus. It was Yi Guchen and the others. On the other side, Situ Hongxue also escaped from another direction. Situ Hongxue was able to escape not only because of the 7 extinction demon heart, but also because of the protective jade talisman that the master of the Immortal Valley had left for her. On Yi Guchen's side, he and Su Jianshir's gazes were fixed on the little fatty. How did you block the devouring demonic chi and the fleshly devil fetus? Yi Guchen asked in surprise. Don't ask me. I don't know anything. The little fatty's face twitched as he smiled bitterly. But no matter what, at least they had escaped alive. It's Yi Guchen and the others. Some sharp-eyed people also saw Yi Guchen and the others. That's great. The people of the sword sect, Yan Wushuang, Shui, and the others all had tears in their eyes. They were constantly on tenterhooks for Yi Guchen and the others. At that moment, an incomparably cold voice with bone-deep anger resounded between heaven and earth. Little bastard, you're still alive? An incomparably powerful aura spread out, and the pressure was like a monstrous wave. Even experts at the 9th level of the divine dwelling realm would feel suffocated. It was Zheng Gu. At this moment, his eyes were extremely bloodshot. He stared at Yi Guchen and the others and said, "You killed Zhou Heng too? You brought this upon yourself." Yi Guchen wasn't afraid in the slightest in the face of the venerables' killing intent and pressure. Zhou Heng was courting death, and it had nothing to do with him. Where is His Highness the Crown Prince? The 2 venerables of the Heavenly Star Empire berated anxiously. The fake saint retired emperor of the Heavenly Star Empire attached great importance to Crown Prince Xinghong. But now that they had lost contact with him, their hearts sank to the bottom. He's also dead, Yi Guchen said indifferently. Ah. The two venerables' auras couldn't help going berserk, and their eyes turned red. The eyes of the millions of onlookers widened as they sucked in a deep breath. Zhou Heng and Crown Prince Xinghong were both dead, but Yi Guchen and the others had survived. How tough was Yi Guchen's life? Good, very good. You little bastard, no one can save you today. That Zheng Gu and the two venerables of the Heavenly Star Empire attacked. They didn't believe that Yi Guchen could unleash a terrifying sword move that killed 3 venerables like that day. Facing the pressure of the 3 venerables, Yi Guchen was about to undo Little Black Seal. But at that moment, a voice that was as cold as ice came from the distant horizon. Stop, I'll take his life. Yi Guchen's aura went berserk when he heard the voice. It was a kind of anger and killing intent that erupted from his bones. His gaze was as sharp as a sword as he looked at the figure where the voice came from. Gu Shao Yang. Chapter 779. Space distorted in the distant horizon. Following which, a man and a woman walked out. The young man wore the Big Dipper robe and the Mizar star crown. He had a handsome face and eyes as deep as the starry sky. His skin contained the splendor of stars, making him look like a god. As for the woman beside him, she wore a moon-white robe and was as cold as frost. There was a tear mole at the corner of her eye, which made her snow-white, beautiful, sparkling and translucent jade-like face look somewhat lovely and moving. The newcomers were Gu Xiaoyang and Yi Tangyue. That's Gu Xiaoyang from the Starry Sword Pavilion, the Mizar Star. Heavens, one of the 10 great young masters, young Master Xingyun, actually appeared here. And that woman beside him, could she be Fairy Tsangyue from the Misty Sword Pavilion? Some of the geniuses from the dynasties were unable to conceal the shock in their hearts when they saw these two people arrive, and they exclaimed with surprise. Gu Xiaoyang and Yi Tsangyue were both famous prodigies in the South Sky region. Gu Xiaoyang was one of the 10 great young masters and ranked 9th on the Dragon Phoenix list. For such a peerless genius to personally come here, how could it not be surprising and shocking? At this moment, Gu Xiaoyang had lost some of his composure. His eyes were as cold as an abyss. Yi Guchen, how dare you? Gu Xiaoyang was enraged. He didn't expect Song Yuyao to be killed by Yi Guchen. This was too laughable to him. It was as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. However, the cruel reality told Gu Xiaoyang that all of this was true. Gu Xiaoyang, you finally appeared. Yi Guchen's eyes were slightly red. It was a kind of monstrous anger that rose up from the bones. Xia Yubing and Gu Xiaoyang were the source of all karma. As for Xia Yubing, Yi Guchen had already completely ended it. Only Gu Xiaoyang was left. There was no need to say anything more between the two. It was a deep-rooted hatred that could only be resolved with life and death. Gu Xiaoyang, back in the Tianhuang Plains, I once said, Su Jianshir's sword and the fact that her innate sword embryo was stolen will definitely be returned in the future. As for this Song Yuyao, she's just collecting interest. Yi Guchen's tone was as cold as water. When Gu Xiaoyang heard this, a chilling intent shot out from his eyes that were as deep as the starry sky. Yi Tsangyue, on the other hand, was surprised. Is he the original owner of the innate sword embryo? Life and death chamber realm? Yi Tsangyue glanced at Yi Guchen. A life and death chamber was indeed nothing in her eyes. But at this moment, the indestructible divine embryo in Yi Tsangyue's body suddenly trembled slightly, as if it had found some sort of resonance. This, Yi Tsangyu raised her long eyelashes slightly, and a trace of surprise appeared in her clear moon-like eyes. This was the first time her innate ability, the imperishable divine embryo, had resonated with something like this. Before this, even Gu Xiaoyang, who possessed the innate sword embryo, had not been able to cause the immortal divine embryo to react in such a way. Could it be? Yi Tsangyu's eyes dimmed as she pondered. Yi Guchen, I've underestimated you. I didn't expect that even the spirit-devouring vermin could not kill you. Since that's the case, I'll completely erase you today. Gu Xiaoyang's tone was cold and aloof, like a god overlooking a mortal. Song Yuyao's death had indeed infuriated him, but he did not feel too much heartache. If Gu Xiaoyang truly liked Song Yuyao, he would not have pursued Yi Songyu. Song Yuyao was merely a plaything of his. Her death was not a big deal. He only felt that it was a pity. What really angered him was the fact that Yi Guqin, a nobody, was still alive. All of you back off. Let me take his life. Gu Xiaoyang's tone was indifferent. He had another intention. Naturally, he wanted to kill Yi Guqin, the original owner of the innate sword embryo, in front of Yi Songyu. This way, Yi Songyu would cut off any hesitation and dual cultivate with him. All right. Zheng Gu nodded slightly. Well, the two venerables of the Heavenly Star dynasty hesitated. After all, Xinghong Crown Prince was dead. They had to make Yi Guqin pay with his life. What? You think Gu Xiaoyang can't kill that little bastard? Zheng Gu said indifferently. That's true. The two venerables of the Heavenly Star dynasty immediately understood. Who was Gu Xiaoyang? He was one of the top 10 young masters, 9th on the Dragon Phoenix list, and a peerless genius with 2 gifted superpowers. No matter how powerful Yi Guqin was and how he could turn the tables and kill Song Yuyao, he could not defeat Gu Xiaoyang. They were not the only ones who thought so. The millions of onlookers also thought so. Although many people admired Yi Guqin, they did not think that Yi Guqin could defeat Gu Xiaoyang. Yi Guqin still has to die in the end. Dongfang Shuri shook his head. Dongfang Xiun also looked at Yi Guqin with resentment. This scapegoat could finally die. Brother Yi is in trouble now. Kenpo's face was very solemn under his mask. However, he could not interfere in this situation. Your Highness, I'm afraid that Yi Guqin is dead for sure, right? Beside Princess Fengxi, Chu Huang shook his head. Although she was shocked by Yi Guqin's strength before, she felt that Yi Guqin had no chance of survival against one of the top 10 young masters, Gu Xiaoyang. Although the situation is like this, I have a feeling that Yi Guqin will give everyone a big surprise. Princess Fengxi's eyes were deep as she muttered to herself. How is that possible? No matter how heaven-defying Yi Guqin is, killing Song Yuyao is already his limit. There's no way he can defeat Gu Xiaoyang, Chu Huang said disapprovingly. How many miracles has he created? Princess Fengxi's lips curled into a smile. Chu Huang was speechless. It seemed that it was true. On the other side, the disciples of the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest broke out in cold sweat. Although Yi Guqin had left the Sword Sect's Pagoda Forest, in their hearts, Yi Guqin would always be their eldest senior brother. Yi Guqin Shuang believes in you. Although Yan Wushuang was worried about Yi Guqin, she was more confident in Yi Guqin. Big brother Yi, if anyone dares to hurt you, Shui will not let them off. Shui clenched her small fists tightly, and within her bright and beautiful eyes, there was a faint scarlet that caused one's heart to palpitate. At this moment, the millions of cultivators around the flesh devil fetus were all paying attention to the battle. Yi Guqin, a sword sect master of the Saint Origin dynasty, had risen from poverty and swept through all 4 directions with his sword. He had suppressed Prime Sovereign Seven Slaughter and Prime Sovereign Saber Demon with his sword. He could be said to have risen from the bottom and soared into the 9 heavens. As for Gu Xiaoyang, he came from a noble background and possessed extraordinary strength. He had even used cruel means to take away Yi Guqin's Khanate sword embryo and became a peerless genius with 2 talents, becoming one of the top 10 young masters. The battle between the two could be said to be shocking, but the majority of them seemed to have already expected the outcome. They just wanted to see the unyielding Yi Guqin shine for the last time. Chapter 780. Silly boy, don't go. Su Jianshi grabbed Yi Guqin's arm. This scene was familiar. Back in the Tianhuang Plains, Gu Xiaoyang was like a god while Yi Guqin and Su Jianshi were like ants before him. And now, it was Yi Guqin and Su Jianshi facing Gu Xiaoyang again. You don't believe me? Yi Guqin said calmly. Even if Gu Xiaoyang was an unprecedented enemy, he wasn't afraid. Because Yi Guqin wasn't the same as before. Su Jianshi choked. She just didn't want to see Yi Guqin challenge such a powerful enemy. This time, it won't be like last time. I won't let you take the risk for me again. A faint smile appeared on Yi Guqin's face as he brushed away Su Jianshi's messy hair. I don't want you to die. Su Jianshi couldn't hold it in anymore. Her eyes were filled with hot tears as she hugged Yi Guqin tightly. That was because she knew Yi Guqin's personality. He would definitely not avoid this battle. This scene also caused the expressions of the surrounding people to change. It was like a farewell. Tsk, Yi Guqin can still enjoy her tenderness when he's about to die. He can really be a playboy. Grandma Withered Flower saw Sidu Hongshue's pale face and couldn't help adding fuel to the fire. Don't say any more. Sidu Hongxue clenched her fists as her fingernails pierced into her palms. She didn't even notice the blood flowing between her fingers. This scene made her feel as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. She was the one who started it. It didn't matter if she met Yi Guqin or if they were together. But why did fate play tricks on her in the end? The Seven Despair Demon heart throbbed as if it wanted to drown out Sidu Hongshue's last emotions. The Seven Despair Demon heart is about to reach the great accomplishment stage. This trip was not in vain. Seeing this, Grandma Withered Flower's old eyes revealed a smug look. In the sky, Yi Guqin let go of Su Jianshi with a faint warmth on his face. This time, let me do it myself. Don't block the sword for me, all right? Yi Guqin said. I believe you. Su Jianshi nodded obediently. She knew that Gu Xiaoyang was a knot in Yi Guqin's heart. Only by dealing with him personally would he be able to untie this knot in his heart. On the other side, Gu Xiaoyang's expression was indifferent. He turned to Yi Songyue and said, Fairy Songyue, Yi Guqin is the original owner of the innate sword embryo. However, you will be able to witness his fall today. Is that so? Yi Songyue said coldly and said no more. Could it be that Fairy Songyue thinks that I'm inferior to that ant? Gu Xiaoyang frowned slightly. Facts will prove everything. Yi Songyue didn't say anything else. Gu Xiaoyang took the opportunity to say, all right then. If I kill Yi Guqin, I hope that Fairy Songyue can fulfill my wish. Don't be so sure, said Yi Songyue. All right, then Fairy Songyue, watch carefully. Gu Xiaoyang flicked his sleeves and stood high in the sky. Starlight scattered around his body as an unparalleled aura spread out from his body like a violent tide. Third firmament of the divine palace realm. Everyone was shocked. Countless gasps resounded in all directions. This isn't a joke, right? Third firmament of the divine palace realm. My God, how old is Gu Xiaoyang? He's already a divine palace expert. Is this the strength of one of the 10 great titles? Everyone was shocked when they felt Gu Xiaoyang's divine palace aura. Even some of the prideful heaven prides from the top empires were shocked. They felt as if thunder was rumbling in their heads. Comparing oneself to others would only make one angry. His talent, cultivation, and strength were worlds apart from the heaven prides from the top empires. Even Yan Wushuang, Princess Fengxi, and the others, who had some confidence in Yi Guqin, were shocked. Gu Xiaoyang's cultivation had exceeded their imagination. Such a young divine palace expert could be regarded as a sect master in the Saint Origin Empire. Yi Guqin is dead for sure. Dongfang Shuri shook his head. Yi Guqin was able to contend against the heaven and earth spirit bridge with the strength of the great mysterious gate. It was already very surprising. It would be a fantasy to say that he could contend against a divine palace expert. Su Jianshi and the others' hearts tightened. Yi Guqin, are you desperate? Gu Xiaoyang stood high in the sky like the king of the stars. Endless starlight enveloped his body. I'm no longer as weak as I was in the heavenly desolate plains. So what if you're at the divine palace stage? Yi Guqin's aura erupted like a volcano. It was endless fury. It was surging battle intent. It was the determination to fight against Gu Xiaoyang. Back then in the heavenly desolate plains, he wasn't Gu Xiaoyang's opponent, and it was Jun Xiaoyao who helped him out of his predicament. However, the current Yi Guqin had already been reborn. So what if he was at the divine palace stage? He still couldn't make the sword sect retreat. Come and fight. Yiguchen didn't hold back his aura. He pushed his limit sea of chi and chaotic sea of knowledge to the extreme. At the same time, his perfect body, flawless diamond body, and ancient god tactic were all activated at the same time. Yiguchen's body expanded, and ancient god light runes spread out from his body. Without any hesitation or reservation, Yiguchen directly erupted into the ancient god form. He knew that he could only fight against Gu Xiaoyang in the Divine Palace stage if he unleashed the most powerful ancient god form. I'll still give you what I said back then. How can an ant overturn the heavens? Gu Xiaoyang's aura was intimidating, as if he was the ruler of the stars. His tone was indifferent. From the beginning to the end, Yiguchen was an ant-like existence in his eyes. No one is born to be high and mighty. Yiguchen's eyes were instantly swallowed by the color of blood, and a terrifying blood-colored sword chi burst out. It was as if it had been infected by Yiguchen's desire to kill his enemies. The sword aura that was as turbulent as a blood tide also surged. The peerless Azura sword Dao. Yiguchen used his trump card as soon as he attacked. The peerless Azura sword Dao. Is this what you're relying on? Gu Xiaoyang was a little surprised to see Yiguchen display the sword Dao, but that was all. But you're so confident with just the sword Dao? The corners of Gu Xiaoyang's mouth curved into a cold smile. As he raised his hand, an incomparably vast sword chi soared into the sky. Above his head, the sky seemed to be filled with sword chi, turning into a starry sky with specks of twinkling stars. Every speck of starlight was an incomparably sharp sword chi. The sword Dao is also the sword Dao. Seeing Gu Xiaoyang's means, exclamations rang out from all directions. The peerless star sword Dao. Gu Xiaoyang raised his hand and pressed down. The endless starlight in the pitch-black starry sky turned into a dense rain of swords, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Gu Xiaoyang had comprehended the star sword Dao when he was in the Tianhuang Plains. After such a long time, he had thoroughly comprehended the star sword Dao and transformed it into the star sword Dao. Yiguchen slashed out with his sword, and Azura sword chi gushed out. Two peerless sword Daos collided. Two lifelong enemies collided. This battle was earth-shattering. Chapter 781. The pitch-black starry sky was filled with starlight. Every ray of light was a sword chi that could pierce through everything. One could imagine how shocking that scene would be. Boundless starlight would descend from the dense starry sky, transforming into sword chi that was like rain as it surged downwards. Kill! Yiguchen was fearless as he pushed the Azura sword Dao to the extreme. The unparalleled blood-red sword light tore through the sky. God-slaying sword art, Prometha. The Azura sword Dao and the god-slaying sword art were even more powerful. Yiguchen charged forward and the blood-red sword light broke through the endless starry sword rain. However, more and more sword rain came crashing down. Even the sword energy Prometha flower that he had formed was completely consumed. Boom, boom, boom. Yiguchen blocked with his sword, but he was still shaken. His figure retreated as his body trembled. Yiguchen is already at a disadvantage after the first exchange. Seeing Yiguchen being pushed back by a single move, the surrounding people exclaimed. After all, Yiguchen was invincible among the younger generation. But now, Yiguchen was pushed back by a single move. The difference was too great. Even the disciples of the Sword Sect Pagoda Forest gritted their teeth as they couldn't bear to see it. It's not bad. Yiguchen is only at the Grand Profound Martial Realm. He's 2 realms lower than Gu Xiaoyang. It's already amazing that he wasn't killed in a single move. There was also a group of spectators who spoke up. But no matter what, Yiguchen was at a disadvantage. It was an indisputable fact. Your strength doesn't seem to match your tone. Gu Xiaoyang's expression was indifferent as he stood in the sky and under the starry sky. He exuded an aura of supremacy. Yiguchen's unyielding resistance was laughable in his eyes. You're so confident after just the first exchange? Yiguchen's eyes were completely swallowed by the blood-red color as if they were soaked in blood. Azura blood C18 levels. Yi Guchen's killing intent towards Gu Xiaoyang was so shocking that it seemed to have materialized. Inspired by the killing intent, Yi Guchen activated the Azura Sword Dao domain, which became even more powerful. The boundless sea of blood covered the sky and collided with the starry sword Qi. An 18-level blood prison emerged from the sea of blood. Sword Principal Domain? Gu Xiaoyang smiled contemptuously. He raised his hand again and streaked it across the pitch-black starry sky above. After that, under the flabbergasted gazes of everyone, boundless stellar sword Qi surged and converged within the pitch-black starry sky. In the end, it actually transformed into a seemingly material river of stars. The Milky Way was resplendent, hanging in the void. However, if a Sword Dao Grandmaster were to sense it, he would be shocked to discover that the entire galaxy was formed by endless sword Qi. Milky Way illuminates the 9 heavens. As soon as Gu Xiaoyang finished speaking, the Milky Way fell down, emitting endless sword Qi. The void was filled with endless sword Qi, as if it was about to be destroyed. The Milky Way illuminated the 9 heavens. It was the sword domain of the peerless Star Sword Dao. Since Gu Xiaoyang had comprehended the Star Sword Dao, he could naturally display the sword domain. Rumble! The sharp sound of endless metal colliding shook the heavens and earth. The Milky Way formed by the starry sword Qi collided with the Azura Blood Sea, bursting forth with astonishing waves of sword Qi. Yi Guchen was blasted back by the impact of the waves of sword Qi. His chest violently shook, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. On the other hand, Gu Xiaoyang didn't retreat in the slightest. He remained indifferent from the beginning to the end. This was the gap between the divine dwelling stage and the great mysterious gate. Even if Yi Guchen's foundation was strong and he could forcibly contend against or even kill a heaven and earth spirit bridge expert. But it wasn't so easy to face a divine dwelling stage expert. The gap of a small stage could be made up by various means. But if the gap was too big, it would be difficult to make up for it unless there were some heaven-defying means. Seeing that Yi Guchen was forced to retreat again, some of the surrounding warriors sighed. Oh, it seems that little bastard will be played to death by Gu Xiaoyang. Zheng Gu sneered. The current battle situation was extremely unfavorable for Yi Guchen. The Milky Way surrounded Yi Guchen, trapping him. Yi Guchen's figure fell between the Azura Blood Sea and the 18 layers of the blood prison, resisting the erosion of the Milky Way. It's all useless. It's easier to just let yourself be killed. Gu Xiaoyang was very relaxed. The more casually he killed Yi Guchen, the more important his position in Yi Songyue's heart would be. Yi Songyue's clear moon-like eyes looked at Yi Guchen, who was trapped in the Milky Way. Although he was facing a divine dwelling stage expert and was in a desperate situation, there wasn't the slightest trace of fear on the youngster's face. There was only an increasingly gushing fighting spirit and a vengeful anger that wanted to burn everything. 108,000 swords. Yi Guchen's black hair fluttered wantonly as he let out a long roar. The limit sea of qi in his body rapidly rotated, and endless golden qi gushed out. 108,000 sword souls turned into a world-shaking azure torrent that poured out of Yi Guchen's body. This time, the sword souls didn't condense into an azure dragon sword, but like a peacock spreading its tail, they swept out in all directions and attacked the Milky Way. The starry sword Qi in the Milky Way collided with the heaven-splitting sword soul, bursting out endless sparks and buzzing sounds. The void seemed to be filled with sword-buzzing sounds. It's the sword sect's ultimate technique. I almost forgot that you're the 9th-generation sword sect sequence. A strange look flashed across Gu Xiaoyang's eyes, but he instantly calmed down. Since that's the case, I'll kill you and seize your sequence emblem. Thinking of this, Gu Xiaoyang lifted his hand, and terrifying scarlet sword Qi gushed out. The scarlet sword Qi was as powerful as the sun, and it emitted an endless and astonishing aura that made everyone aghast. The heaven prides from the top empires were even more dumbfounded. The fluctuations made them feel that if they were to face it, they would be killed in one move. Sun-slashing brilliant void sword Qi. Gu Xiaoyang's hand fell, and the shocking scarlet sword light that was hundreds of feet long slashed towards Yi Guchen's head. The sword sect's ultimate technique. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. Since Gu Xiaoyang was the 9th generation sword sect sequence, it wasn't surprising that he had obtained the sword sect's ultimate technique. Moreover, Gu Xiaoyang had also used this technique in the infinite planes. Sword Soul, condense. Yi Guqin used his mind to activate the sword souls. After the 108,000 sword souls broke through the Milky Way, they gathered together under Yi Guqin's will and turned into an azure dragon sword chi. The azure dragon sword roared into the sky and collided with the sun-slashing brilliant void sword chi. This was a collision between two ultimate techniques of the sword sect. Boom! Extremely shocking fluctuations spread out, and sword chi swept out in all directions. The scarlet sword light slashed down along the dragon sword, but it couldn't completely destroy it after splitting half of it. Gu Xiaoyang frowned slightly. Back in the infinite planes, he had used the sun-slashing brilliant void sword chi to severely injure Yi Guqin, making it difficult for him to fight. But this time, it was blocked by Yi Guqin. I've said that times have changed. Gu Xiang, have a taste of this move. Yi Guqin's eyes were extremely cold. If Gu Xiaoyang still looked at him like before, he would definitely regret it. Sword sect's ultimate technique, Reincarnation Sword Lotus. Chapter 782. Yi Guqin raised his hand and endless golden genuine qi gushed out. Sword qi soared and turned into a beautiful sword lotus in the air. The 108 leaves of the golden sword lotus rotated in the air. It was beautiful, but it carried an incomparably fatal killing intent. Another sword faction unique skill? Gu Xiaoyang was surprised. Sword faction unique skills were not easy to obtain. Most of them only appeared in the opportunities and relics left behind by the sword faction. Moreover, it was not guaranteed that one could cultivate it successfully. Gu Xiaoyang was surprised that Yi Guqin could perform a second sword faction unique skill. But so what? You can't even imagine the opportunities I've had. Although Yi Guqin was out of Gu Xiaoyang's expectation, he still had great confidence in himself. Gu Xiaoyang raised his hand again, and endless sword qi gushed out from his palm. The sky seemed to tremble, and the vigorous sword qi finally turned into a sword seal that was the color of the sky. Sword faction unique skill, Firmament Sword Seal. As Gu Xiaoyang's palm pressed down, the azure sword seal also carried a vigorous sword aura as it pressed down and fiercely collided with the golden sword lotus. In an instant, extremely violent sword qi poured out in all directions as if it was going to boil the air. What kind of skill is that? Seeing Gu Xiaoyang and Yi Guqin perform their ultimate skills, the millions of people present were dumbfounded. They did not know how powerful and terrifying the sword faction unique skills created by the sword faction's past generations were. The surging sword qi swept out in all directions. Yi Guqin's body was pushed back again. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth and his chest shook violently. The gap between his cultivation level and Gu Xiaoyang's was too big. Gu Xiaoyang's body shook and the contempt in his eyes lessened a little. He was slightly surprised by the power of the reincarnation sword lotus. If he and Yi Guqin were in the same cultivation level, Gu Xiaoyang might not be able to suppress Yi Guqin. Cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Gu Xiaoyang's eyes turned colder. Last time, it was because he hadn't been able to kill Yi Guqin that Song Yuyao had died. Gu Xiaoyang would not make such a low-level mistake again. Galaxy Swordsmanship, Star Fall. Gu Xiaoyang performed the supreme king-level sword art of the Starry Sword Pavilion. He still did not use his sword. In his eyes, Yi Guqin, who was only at life and death chamber, did not have the qualifications to make him use his sword. The stellar sword qi rolled in Gu Xiaoyang's palm. Then, like a meteor, it shot towards Yi Guqin. Although it was only a top-grade king-level sword art, the power displayed by Gu Xiaoyang, who was at the divine dwelling stage, was close to that of an emperor-level sword art. Immortal murdering sword technique. Yi Guqin's Xianming heavy sword slashed forward. With a bang, Yi Guqin was blasted back once more, and a wisp of blood and sweetness surged up into his mouth. Galaxy Swordsmanship, Star's Extremity. Gu Xiaoyang stood high in the sky with his back against the Milky Way. His expression was indifferent as he spoke. His sword aura surged violently, and every move he made was like a shooting star. Bang! Yi Guchen countered with another move, but he was blasted back, and the web between his thumb and forefinger was shattered. Star's glory, Gu Xiaoyang said indifferently. Every time he spoke, he would make a move. Every move could easily annihilate a prodigy at the level of Crown Prince Xinghong. But Yi Guchen relied on his own strength and powerful ancient god body to forcibly hold on. But at this moment, Yi Guchen's body was covered in blood. If it weren't for his ancient god body and the ancient god heart sealed in his body, Yi Guchen might not have been able to hold on. Silly boy. In the distance, Su Jianshi looked at Yi Guchen's blood-stained back, and her heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. But what was more painful was that she could not interfere. This was the karma that Yi Guchen had to resolve himself. Cough, cough. Yi Guchen coughed up blood, and his body was covered in sword wounds of various sizes. Although he could withstand Gu Xiaoyang's moves, it didn't mean that he was unharmed. Ancient God Heart. Yi Guchen used the ancient god tactic to sense the sealed ancient god's heart in his body. Drops of ancient god's blood flowed out from the heart and merged with Yi Guchen's body. Yi Guchen's ancient god body also began to recover at an astonishing speed, and the muscles around his wounds began to wriggle and heal. His perfect body had powerful recovery abilities, and with the addition of the ancient god body and ancient god blood, it was impossible for him to recover. Regardless of how strong Yi Guchen's body was, his recovery ability was unparalleled. Yi Guchen's aura seems to have risen again? Some sharp-eyed people could see that Yi Guchen's condition had become more vigorous. The body. Gu Xiaoyang's eyes narrowed. Only 1 in 10,000 people could recognize the inheritance of the ancient god clan. Only those old antiques knew about it. Gu Xiaoyang didn't deliberately learn about the 100 clans, so he naturally didn't know about Yi Guchen's current means. Your body is a little strange, but if I completely extinguish your vitality, can you recover? Gu Xiaoyang's lips curved into a cold smile. He slowly raised his hand, and his 5 fingers curled as he shouted coldly. 7-star fantasy god. Clang! An incomparably ear-piercing clang resounded between heaven and earth, shaking everyone's eardrums. A dazzling long sword, flowing with silver splendor, flashed across the sky. It was the emblem of the Big Dipper. When the sword appeared, dark clouds seemed to gather in the sky, and there were faint rumbles of thunder. That's a quasi-tribulation divine weapon. Some divine-dwelling experts of the top empires couldn't help but exclaim. A quasi-tribulation divine weapon was a weapon whose quality was close to a tribulation divine weapon, but it hadn't passed the lightning tribulation. After bathing in the tribulation, it would become a true tribulation divine weapon. But even a quasi-tribulation divine weapon was far more powerful than a supreme-grade divine weapon with mystical runes. That's the 7-star fantasy god. It's rumored to be one of the divine weapons placed beside the 7-star Longyuan all year round. Manager Zheng Gu was also surprised. Gu Xiaoyang rarely fought after he became famous, and he rarely used his sword. So even he didn't know that the pavilion had given this divine weapon to Gu Xiaoyang. The power of a famed ancient sword was vast. Not to mention such a divine weapon, even ordinary iron would be stained with a divine aura if it was placed beside the famed ancient sword every day. The quality of the 7-star fantasy god was higher than Song Yuyao's Alcade sword and Zhou Heng's Alioth sword. From this, it could be seen that the Starry Sword Pavilion valued Gu Xiaoyang very much. They had even given him such a divine weapon. Killing a chicken with a butcher's knife. It's your honor to die under the 7-star fantasy god. Gu Xiaoyang didn't want to delay too much. He wanted to end the battle quickly. He held the 7-star fantasy god and infused his astral chi into it. In an instant, the 7-star fantasy god's blade emitted a dazzling silver sword light that could blind people. Kill! Gu Xiaoyang shouted as he swept out his sword. The dazzling sword light illuminated the sky. Chapter 783. The 7-star illusionary god, a quasi-tribulation weapon, was very powerful. Even if Gu Xiaoyang didn't use any sword techniques, the original power of the 7-star illusionary god was enough to shock people. Gu Xiaoyang stabbed the 7-star illusionary god at Yi Guqin's head. Yi Guqin used his Xianming heavy sword to block the attack like a heavy shield. A loud clang was heard. The tip of the 7-star illusionary god touched the Xianming heavy sword, producing a burst of fierce sparks. A violent explosive force shook the air, causing the surrounding space to be slightly distorted. A terrifying rebounding force passed through the Xianming heavy sword and hit Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's body shook violently, and he retreated quickly. Once again, he tasted sweetness in his mouth. The web between his thumb and index finger was split open, and blood spurted out. Again! Gu Xiaoyang was strolling leisurely. The 7-star illusionary god was so sharp that it seemed to be able to break the void. As expected of a divine weapon that was nurtured by a primordial famous sword, even Deacon Jinggu clicked his tongue in admiration as he looked on enviously. Clang, clang, clang. The two figures crossed one after another, and without exception, Yi Guqin was the one who was knocked back. Fortunately, the Xianming heavy sword was tough and didn't shatter. When the blood prison sword art collided with Gu Zun's 7-kill ancient saber, the Xianming heavy sword was able to withstand it. Although this sword was blunt, heavy, and not very sharp, it was very sturdy. The sword is a bit interesting, but unfortunately, the person is not. Gu Xiaoyang couldn't help but shake his head and smile. This was a straightforward mockery. He didn't take Yi Guqin seriously at all, thinking that the sword was stronger than the person. The battle is not over yet. Who knows the outcome? Although Yi Guqin was bathed in blood, he didn't give in at all. Well, then I'll let you experience what it means to be in complete despair. Gu Xiaoyang's eyes sharpened, and he took 7 steps in a row with 1 foot. This was the Starry Sword Pavilion's Emperor-level movement technique, the Big Dipper star-stepping steps. He took 7 steps, leaving behind 7 afterimages. It was as if he had traversed the void. The 7 stars mysterious god in Gu Xiaoyang's hand chopped down on Yi Guqin's head. Be careful! Yan Wushuang and the others in the Sword Sect's forest of pagodas couldn't help but let out sharp cries of terror. This kind of speed was too fast for them. Even their eyes were unable to catch sight of it. Gu Xiaoyang smiled coldly. An Emperor-class movement technique was even rarer than an Emperor-class martial arts. Even a top-tier dynasty might not have an Emperor-class movement technique. It's over. Some people couldn't bear to see Yi Guqin's blood splatter across the sky. To think that such a dark horse would fall in such a manner. But at this moment, Yi Guqin stepped into the void, and his figures suddenly became blurry. The 7 stars manifest god streaked across Yi Guqin's neck. Some of the surrounding warriors held their breaths. Yan Wushuang felt dizzy and was about to faint. That's not right. There's no blood. After a full breath, some people finally reacted and exclaimed. Gu Xiaoyang's eyes were filled with surprise. At this moment, a powerful wave of sword qi came from behind Gu Xiaoyang. Azura Tribulation, destruction of heaven and earth. Yi Guqin used the Azura sword Dao to activate the 10,000 God Tribulation. A pair of blood-red sword wings unfurled from his back, bursting forth with boundless sword light. Powerful true qi poured into the Xianming heavy sword. A sharp sword light pierced through everything and pierced towards Gu Xiaoyang. Galaxy sword art, destruction of stars. Gu Xiaoyang hurriedly swung his sword back, colliding with Yi Guqin's powerful move. Boom! The sword light collided with each other, causing ripples to spread out in the void. Yi Guqin's figure was sent flying again, and he spat out a mouthful of red blood. But surprisingly, Gu Xiaoyang was also sent flying, and the hand holding the sword trembled slightly. Caught off guard, Gu Xiaoyang had suffered a small loss. This, a divine dwelling stage expert with a quasi-tribulation weapon, was sent flying? Some of the dynasty's cultivators were stunned. Logically speaking, this should be an absolute suppression. Even Yi Cangyue's eyes were filled with surprise. Yi Guqin's performance was somewhat beyond her expectations. You have an Emperor-class movement technique? Gu Xiaoyang's face was as cold as ice. He had made a fool of himself in front of millions of spectators and Itangyue. Although he had only been sent flying a few steps, it was still a great humiliation. Yiguchen sneered. He naturally wouldn't say anything. But this so close, yet worlds apart is really useful, Yiguchen thought. The so close, yet worlds apart taught by the little fatty was derived from the divine movement secret art, one of the top 10 ancient secret arts. Its speed didn't disappoint Yiguchen's expectations. Yiguchen's willow catkin wind, wave-like subtle steps, and other movement techniques were more inclined towards fighting, dodging, and confusing the enemy. In terms of speed, they didn't have much of an advantage. But in terms of speed, so close, yet worlds apart wasn't inferior to an emperor-class movement technique. Yiguchen hadn't yet cultivated this secret art to the manifestation stage. Otherwise, his speed would be even faster. Seeing that Yiguchen was silent, the killing intent in Gu Xiaoyang's eyes seemed to be about to materialize. He originally wanted to play with Yiguchen like a cat playing with a mouse. But now, Yiguchen had truly infuriated him. Thousand-star pilgrimage sword art. Gu Xiaoyang held the 7 stars transformations god in his hand and repeatedly tapped the void with his sword. Sword lights condensed in the void like stars. It's the emperor-class sword art of the Starry Sword Pavilion. It seems that Gu Xiaoyang is going to kill him, some people said solemnly. He controlled a quasi-heavenly tribulation divine weapon with his divine dwelling cultivation and executed an emperor-class sword art. Could Yiguchen survive? The result was obvious to everyone. Is it going to end? Yi Songyue's eyes were calm. When she first met Yiguchen, the immortal divine embryo in her body resonated with him. But if Yiguchen died in Gu Xiaoyang's hands, nothing would change. The innate sword embryo would still belong to Gu Xiaoyang. Silly boy. Su Jianshi clenched her fists as cold sweat trickled down her back. Although Yiguchen couldn't interfere, if anything happened to him, Su Jianshi would step in no matter what. At this moment, the entire place fell silent. Countless people held their breaths as they waited for Gu Xiaoyang's ultimate move. Zhou Heng had also used the 1,000-star pilgrimage sword art before. But Zhou Heng could only tap out 1,000 rays of sword light. But now, Gu Xiaoyang had tapped out more than 5,000 rays of sword light in an instant, and the number was still increasing. Gu Xiaoyang has already comprehended the 1,000-star pilgrimage sword art to the greater mastery stage. Yiguchen is definitely going to die. Zheng Gu's lips curved into a cold smile. An emperor-class sword art at the greater mastery stage was extremely powerful. Gu Xiaoyang stood in the void and tapped out 7,000 rays of sword light. 7,000 streaks of sword radiance froze in the void like a field of stars. The 7 stars illusion in Gu Xiaoyang's hand trembled. The moment the void trembled, the 7,000 rays of sword light shot toward Yiguchen along with Gu Xiaoyang's sword aura. It was like a meteor shower of sword light that could destroy everything. Yiguchen, bow your head and die. Gu Xiaoyang's voice was like thunder as he made the decision of life and death. Chapter 784. He was only at the divine dwelling stage, and he was using a quasi-tribulation divine weapon to display an emperor-level sword technique. There was no doubt about the power of this sword technique. Even a divine dwelling expert of the same level would have to put in a lot of effort to take it on. A heaven and earth spirit bridge expert was almost certain to die. As for the life and death threshold, in the eyes of the crowd, this was not a fair battle at all. Anyone in Yiguchen's position would feel despair. But who was Yiguchen? He was the sword master who swept the world. The sword demon who dominated the world. In his dictionary, there was no such thing as bowing down and killing. Where the heart goes, the sword goes. The stronger the heart, the stronger the sword. Man and sword become one. Yiguchen first activated the man and sword union, and a burst of sword intent spread out from his body. At that moment, Yiguchen's entire body seemed to have turned into a sword that could slash the heavens and destroy the earth. It's the man and sword union. Although many people already knew that Yiguchen had comprehended the man and sword union. But when they saw it with their own eyes, it was still very shocking. After all, Those who could comprehend the unity of man and sword at such a young age were as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns. Even Gu Xiaoyang had dark clouds in his eyes after seeing Yi Guchen activate the man and sword union. Even a peerless genius like him had only comprehended the heart illumination of the sword. Today, you will die without a doubt. Gu Xiaoyang's killing intent grew stronger. Now, Yi Guchen actually made him feel a little threatened. However, Yi Guchen's means were not only limited to that. After activating the man and sword union, Yi Guchen once again activated his ultimate move. He raised his left hand, and sword chi gushed out, and endless blood-red sword light spread out. God of slaughter! He raised his right hand, and a peerless sword light tore through the sky, and the scene of a group of immortals falling appeared. Immortal slaying! Then Yi Guchen activated the man and sword union to activate the two sword techniques and combine them into one. Immortal God's cry! Yi Guchen struck out, and a sword light that contained an extremely shocking fluctuation spread out. Accompanied by the phantoms of many immortals and gods, the immortals were bathed in blood. Gods fell and wept in grief. This was also a powerful royal-level sword art. Yi Guchen might not be able to fully unleash the power of the immortal god's weep, but it was enough to shock others. Rumble! The immortal god's weep transformed into a 1,000-meter-long sword ray that crushed the void with a rumble. It fiercely collided with Gu Xiaoyang's 7,000 sword lights. For a moment, endless ripples and waves of sword chi erupted. The eyes of the millions of cultivators in the surroundings turned into a field of white sword light. They could not see anything at all. All that could be heard was the clanging sound of countless sword lights colliding. Amidst the endless white light, the two figures were forced back at the same time. One of the figures even crashed heavily onto the ground. After a few breaths of time, the light gradually dissipated. Everyone's gaze immediately fell on the battle between the two of them. On the ground, a figure covered in blood slowly stood up. It was Yi Guchen. There were many bloody holes on his body, all of which were left behind by the sword chi. Even his well-defined handsome face was stained with blood. Only a pair of cold, pitch-black eyes were looking at the figure in the sky with an unyielding fighting spirit. On the other side, Gu Xiaoyang stood high in the sky. A crack appeared between his eyebrows, and a third eye appeared. That eye was like the brightest star in the starry sky. It was sparkling and contained a heart-palpitating power. This was Gu Xiaoyang's innate magical power, the stellar eye. At this moment, the stellar eye was constantly flowing with star energy, forming a starry sky barrier in front of Gu Xiaoyang. It was this starry sky barrier that blocked the waves of the collision. Gu Xiaoyang was not hurt at all. Gu Xiaoyang used his innate magical power, the stellar eye. Seeing that Gu Xiaoyang had even used the stellar eyes, many people despised him in their hearts. Was there a need to fight? Some people thought that Gu Xiaoyang might have used the stellar eye because he did not want his image to be damaged. Because if he didn't have any protection, Gu Xiaoyang would have been forced back by the collision of these extreme moves. If this spread out, his reputation as young Master Xingyun would be damaged. Many people looked at Yi Guchen, who was covered in blood, and felt sorry for him. There was no way to fight. Yi Guchen, you surprised me. Gu Xiaoyang's eyes were cold, but his tone became gentle. I am no longer as powerless as I was when I was in the Tianhuang Plains. Yi Guchen's body was stained with blood, but he was still floating in the air, standing at the same height as Gu Xiaoyang. Right now, I have no choice but to admit that you're indeed a bit stronger than before. Although you're still an ant in my eyes, in order to show my respect for you, I've decided to reenact that scene from the past. Gu Xiaoyang seemed to have thought of something, and a playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He closed the stellar eye between his eyebrows and did not use its power again. Instead, his dantian shook, and chaotic chi spread out. A sparkling and translucent sword embryo appeared in a flash. The sword embryo was the size of a palm, and it was shining like a beautiful jade. The sword embryo was branded with mysterious natural patterns, and the chaotic chi emitted from the blade seemed to be able to cut the void, making a hissing sound. It was the Khanate sword embryo. Yiguchen, are you familiar with it? Gu Xiaoyang's lips curled into a playful smile, and a trace of sarcasm appeared in his eyes. The moment Gu Xiaoyang took out the Khanate sword embryo, Yiguchen felt a connection between their blood and their veins. It was as if the sword embryo was a part of his body. However, this part was taken away by Gu Xiaoyang in a bloody manner. Is that the Khanate sword embryo? The talent of a 7th-grade genius is indeed extraordinary. Why do I feel that the sword embryo can cut through everything in the world? It's a pity that the sword embryo was Yi Guchen's talent, but it was taken away by Gu Xiaoyang. Feeling the power of the sword embryo, many martial artists' eyes were burning with desire. No wonder Gu Xiaoyang could rise. He had the stellar eye, and with the Khanate sword embryo that could cut through everything, it would be strange if he was not powerful. Yi Yue, who was watching the battle from the side, also trembled slightly. The immortal divine embryo in her body seemed to be resonating with it, and it trembled again. Who could it be? Yi Yue was curious. In the end, would the Khanate sword embryo be kept in Gu Xiaoyang's hands, or would it return to its original owner? In Yi Yue's eyes, the possibility of it returning to its original owner was almost zero. In order to show my respect for you, I have decided to use your talent to end your life. Gu Xiaoyang smiled proudly. The Khanate sword embryo will always be mine. Yi Guchen's eyes were cold and sharp. Is that so? Isn't this scene a little familiar? It reminds you of the scene in the Tianhuang Plains. However, will this girl die for you again today? Gu Xiaoyang's tone was cold and mocking as he looked at Su Jianshi, who was watching the battle from afar. You bastard! Su Jianshi's eyes were filled with hatred as she looked at Gu Xiaoyang. She bit her lips so hard that they almost broke. She didn't care about sacrificing herself for Yi Guchen. However, when Gu Xiaoyang said it, it was tantamount to opening Yi Guchen's scar. There was a hint of coldness in Yi Guchen's eyes. Su Jianshi had taken a sword for him and fell into a deep sleep for a long time. This made Yi Guchen feel extremely guilty. You can try again today. Yi Guchen's aura sword. It would have been fine if Gu Xiaoyang hadn't mentioned it. At this moment, Yi Guchen recalled that scene. The bone-deep anger turned into monstrous flames that burned the heavens and earth. Well, today I will let the tragedy of that day happen again. Yi Guchen, accept my gift for you. Gu Xiaoyang no longer spoke and poured his divine dwelling qi into the Khanate sword embryo. The Khanate sword embryo buzzed and trembled. It instinctively sensed Yi Guchen's aura and didn't want to betray its master. However, many star runes suddenly appeared on the surface of the Khanate sword embryo and restrained its resistance. Die! Gu Xiaoyang roared. The innate sword embryo turned into an invincible and terrifying sword light and pierced towards Yi Guchen. Su Jianshi couldn't help but dodge. Would the tragedy of the Tianhuang Plains happen again? Chapter 785. The Khanate sword embryo was a natural ability that was born in Yi Guchen's dantian. But now, it was being controlled by Gu Xiaoyang to kill the original owner. The Khanate sword embryo that could cut through everything was filled with chaotic energy as it streaked across the sky. It was like the most dazzling rainbow in the world. No one would be able to block this sword. That little bastard is finally going to die. Zhenggu shook his head and sneered. The two sovereigns of the Heavenly Star dynasty were the same. The enemies of Yi Guchen and those who had a grudge against him were all watching. The Vermilion Bird Jade, Yu Wenin, Yu Wenji, Gong Mingba and the others were all watching. They knew that the sword sex Yi Guchen, who had once swept through them and became their nightmare, would finally fall at this moment. But at the same time, the people of the sword sect Tower Forest, Yi Guchen's friends, LV Qinghan, Bai Yanji, Chen Yi and the others were all watching with sorrow in their eyes. They couldn't do anything in this situation. Yi Guchen, is it going to end like this? Princess Feng Shi's charming face was a little complicated and sad. She and Yi Guchen were friends and enemies, but now, she really didn't want to see Yi Guchen fall. Brother Yi, your glory hasn't bloomed yet. Is it going to end like this? Kenpo also clenched his fists and sighed in his heart. Yi Guchen. Yan Wushuang let out a heart-wrenching cry as tears blurred her eyes. Scenes of the past appeared before her eyes. Was today going to be their farewell? Sidu Hongshue's body trembled slightly. She had the urge to dash out, but the 7 despair demon heart in her body stopped her. Grandma Withered Flower stood in front of Sidu Hongxue and said, "Although you didn't kill him with your own hands, Yiguchen's fall means that you have nothing to worry about." Situ Hongxue was silent. She clearly hated Yiguchen because Yiguchen was also one of the murderers who had annihilated the Situ family. Yiguchen had even killed her brother in front of her. But why, at the moment when Yiguchen was about to fall? In Situ Hongshue's heart, there was a heart-wrenching pain. At this moment, the millions of people from the various empires, from exalts to ordinary cultivators, were all watching the final scene. Would the sword sect Yiguchen, who went against fate, be defeated by young Master Nebula, Gu Xiaoyang? Silly boy. Su Jianshi couldn't take it anymore. She wanted to dash out, but little Fatty pulled her back. "This is Brother Ye's own karma. You must believe in him." It was rare for little Fatty to not have a mischievous smile on his face. Instead, his fat face was extremely solemn. But Su Jianshi felt a heart-wrenching pain. Under the witness of millions of people, you died in the hands of your own innate ability. Yiguchen, your life is complete. Gu Xiaoyang stood with his hands behind his back. He was like the ruler of the stars who ruled over life and death as he looked down at Yiguchen, who was about to be killed by the Khanate sword embryo. Haha. Yiguchen's black hair fluttered in the wind. His clothes were stained with blood, but he had a lofty and unyielding character. "I am the sword sect, but I am also the sword demon. Even the vast expanse of heaven cannot hide my eyes. The vast earth cannot bury my heart. The gods and Buddhas cannot end my life. Gu Xiaoyang, you dare to say that you can end my life? Wishful thinking." Yiguchen roared at the sky. His aura surged and his anger burned the 9 heavens. All the true qi in his body exploded. Primal chaos soul power exploded. Ancient god power exploded. A terrifying aura surged out of Yiguchen's body and gathered in between his eyebrows. There seemed to be a crack in between his eyebrows, but it was difficult to open. Ancient god's heart, explode. Yiguchen's eyes were as red as blood as he activated the power of the ancient god's heart again. Even though the ancient god's heart had been sealed, the ancient god power still surged out and gathered in between Yiguchen's eyebrows. At this moment, the Khanate sword embryo was only a meter away from Yiguchen. In the next moment, Yiguchen would die. Everyone's eyes were fixed on him, and their eyes were bloodshot. They were about to witness the fall of Yiguchen from the sword sect. However, Eye of the Void Vault, open. All the power in Yiguchen's body exploded at the same time. His aura reached an unprecedented peak. This was a rebellion against the unfairness of fate. This was an unyielding roar against death. This was the determination to go against fate and fight throughout the 9 heavens and 10 earths to eliminate all injustice. The crack in between Yiguchen's eyebrows slowly opened. An almost transparent eye that had merged with the void appeared. In an instant, everything seemed to have frozen. The area around Yiguchen, space, and time seemed to have stopped. Gu Xiaoyang, who was not far away from him, was also frozen like a mosquito in amber. He could think and sense everything. However, he could not move or move. The Khanate sword embryo that seemed to have the power to destroy everything also stopped in front of Yiguchen. The Khanate sword embryo that was frozen in the void was beautiful like a shuttle-shaped jade. Even the wisps of chaotic aura that were emitted were frozen like strands of hair. Keep. Yiguchen's vital energy surged and swallowed the Khanate sword embryo into his body. At the same time, he used the Azura sword principle to activate the life fall. Azura tribulation, life fall. The blood-red sword qi swept towards the motionless Gu Xiaoyang with an aura of annihilation. All of this seemed to take a long time. However, it all happened in just 1/10 of a breath's time. In this short time, Yiguchen swallowed the Khanate sword embryo and suppressed it in his dantian. At the same time, he used the Azura tribulation life fall. Gu Xiaoyang's godlike calm eyes revealed fear for the first time as he looked at the blood-red sword light that was heading towards his head. That's right. It was the fear of facing death. Who was Gu Xiaoyang? He was one of the 7 great bears of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. After obtaining Yi Guqin's Khanate sword embryo, he became even more popular. His strength was extraordinary, and he ranked 9th on the Dragon Phoenix list. He was one of the 10 great childs. Gu Xiaoyang, who had a smooth journey and had never experienced a life-or-death crisis. At this moment, he completely experienced the feeling of facing death. No, the sword energy was about to pierce through Gu Xiaoyang's head. However, at this moment, Yi Guqin's body suddenly shook. The ancient god power in his body was almost completely drained. Not a single drop was left. At the same time, the vigorous chaotic soul power in his chaotic consciousness was almost completely drained in 1/10 of a breath's time. What did this mean? It should be known that Yi Guqin's chaotic consciousness was far superior to other warriors of the same level. The consciousness of ordinary life and death portals was a stream, but Yi Guqin's was a vast ocean. However, the ocean-like chaotic soul power was almost completely drained in such a short time. This was extremely terrifying. Pucci. Yi Guqin lost almost all of his strength in an instant. His consciousness was about to collapse. He even spat out a mouthful of blood and left his ancient god form. At this moment, the stagnant space also recovered as if it had melted. Gu Xiaoyang's figure flashed. Pucci. The life-fall sword still pierced through Gu Xiaoyang's chest. Gu Xiaoyang instantly opened his stellar eyes, and stellar mystic power flowed out to protect his heart and other vital parts. Even so, Gu Xiaoyang's figure was still sent flying. The sword energy penetrated his body. Apart from his heart, his ribs and other organs were all broken and damaged. Gu Xiaoyang spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with broken organs. Everyone was dumbfounded at this moment. An unprecedented extreme shock appeared on everyone's faces. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.